好。好，各位观众朋友，早安！欢迎您在今天早上的9点钟一起加入今天的东森大直播。那么今天呢是美国总统大选的第一场电视辩论会，我们东森新闻团队会全程好帮您做口译，在现场是我们的口译记者张正安。
主播好，大家好，我是正安。
好，那稍后会麻烦正安帮我们全程翻译整个，包括川普跟拜登他们从之前的隔空开火互呛啊，到今天是第一次的正面交锋，会擦出什么样的火花呢？那么其实，在现场，好，在台湾时间早上9点钟，整个电视辩论会好已经开始了。我们现在马上来看到在辩论会的最新现场，也要把时间交给正安。
好，大家好，现在现场呢，主持人已经坐到位置上了，然后所有的观众都已经在等待2位候选人上台。
好，所以稍后呢，包括这个民主党78岁的拜登，好被形容是不确战的总统候选人，因为共和党的川普啊，虽然74岁了，但是呢，他真的是非常毒舌。那么其实川普毒舌的功力，其实大家之前包括从他上任啊，真的是这一段时间也都领会到了，包括整个这一次的疫情，好对川普来讲也是一大的考验。那么其实川普他还帮拜登取了一个绰号，叫做爱困乔瞌睡乔。那么甚至在8月份造势的时候，他还直接批评说这个拜登啊智商很低，还取笑拜登戴口罩等等的。但是呢，为什么说拜登不确战？因为拜登他也不是一个省油的灯，这一次他也是猛攻川普，包括疫情，还有包括整个原来川普没有缴税10年的时间没有缴税，现在也被媒体踢爆了。那么包括这2点，很有可能就是今天这个拜登会猛攻川普的弱点之2。那么我们先来看到，包括这一次辩论的时间点，好，我们已经帮您整理出来了。今天呢，台湾时间这个9月30号，那么在美国时间9月29号，在俄亥俄州呢是进行第一场的电视辩论会。那么今天其实有分成6大主题，6个部分，好，各15分钟。那么前面2分钟会是由候选人来回答。那么在10月15号，在佛州是一场非常关键、非常重要的电视辩论会。那么现在在这个整个辩论会的现场，好，稍后拜登跟川普2个人就要来到现场来进行第一场的正面交锋。那么呢，我们再回到这一次的时间点，那么10月15号在佛州其实是非常重要的一场电视辩论会，好，因为佛州是一个非非常重要的摇摆州之一。好，那么现在我们把时间交给正安来到最新的现场。
现在主持人呢是 Chris Wallace 在介绍一下他的背景，然后他非常邀请大家来参加这次的辩论会。
Donald J. Trump and former Vice President Joe Biden. This debate is sponsored by the Commission on Presidential Debates. The Commission has designed the format, 6 roughly 15-minute segments,
他现在
with
在
2-minute
介绍一下
answers
刚
from
主
each
播讲的
candidate to
这
the
次的
first
主题，
question,
还有
then
这次
open
的
discussion for the rest of
这
each
次的
segment.
格式。
Both campaigns have agreed to these rules. For the record, I decided the topics and
所有
the
的主
questions
题
in
都是
each
主持人来
topic.
决定
I
的。
can assure you, none of the questions has been shared with the Commission or the 2 candidates.
2位候
This
选人
debate
都
is
没有
being
事先
conducted
得到
under
任
health
何
and
的
safety
问
protocols
题。
designed by the Cleveland Clinic, which is serving as the health security advisor to the Commission for all 4 debates. As a precaution, both campaigns have agreed the candidates will not shake hands at the beginning of tonight's
因为
debate.
防疫，所以2位候
The
选人
audience
都不
here
会
in the
握
hall has
手。
promised to remain silent. No cheers, no boos or other interruptions, so we, and more importantly you, can focus on what the candidates have to say. No noise except right now, as we welcome the Republican nominee, President Trump,
现在
and the
邀请
Democratic
2位候选
nominee,
人上
Vice
台。
President Biden.
好，各位东森粉丝团的观众朋友，您现在画面上所看到的呢是美国总统大选今天进行第一场的电视辩论会。那么这一次的2位候选人，民主党的拜登还有共和党的川普已经来到现场了。
Gentlemen, a lot of people have been waiting for this night, so let's get going. Our first subject is the Supreme Court.
第一个主题就是大
President
法官
Trump,。you nominated Amy Coney Barrett over the weekend to succeed the late
川普总统，你提名了巴瑞特。
The Constitution is clear about your obligation and the Senate's to consider a nominee to the court. Vice President Biden, you say that this is an effort by the president and Republicans to jam through an appointment
拜登是说这次的提名呢是为了要帮川普买个保险。
Why are you right in the argument you make, and your opponent wrong? And
为什么你
where do you think
表示是正确的，然后川普是错误的呢
？President Trump, in this first segment, you go first. 2 minutes.
Thank you very much, Chris. I will tell you very simply, we won the election. Elections have consequences. We have the Senate, we have the White House, and we have a phenomenal nominee, respected by all.
我们的那个提名的人选非常好
，good in every way. In fact, some of her biggest endorsers are very liberal people.
而且他这位法官背后的支持者很多都是自由派的。
Even if we did it after the election itself, I have a lot of time after the election, as you know. So I think that she will be outstanding. She's going to be as good as anybody that has served on that court. We really feel that. We have a professor at Notre Dame, highly respected by all, said she's the single greatest student he's ever had. He's been a professor for a long time.
一位大学教授说过，这位巴瑞特非常的出色。
We won the election, and therefore we have the right to choose her. And very few people knowingly would say otherwise. And by the way, the Democrats, they wouldn't even think about not doing it. If they had, the only difference is they'd try and do it faster. There's no way they would give it up. They had Merrick Garland, but the problem is they didn't have the election, so they were stopped. And probably that would happen in reverse also. Definitely would happen in reverse. So we won the election, and we have the right to do it, Chris.
我们当时赢了选举，所以我们非常有。
Vice President Biden, you have 2 minutes.
Well, first of all, thank you for doing this, and looking forward to this, Mr. President.
Thank you, Joe.
The American people have a right to have a say in who the Supreme Court nominee is.
美国人民
That say
有
occurs
权利知
when they
道
vote
他们想
for
要
United
提名
States
谁。
senators and when they vote for the President of the United States. They're not going to get that chance now because we're in the middle of an election already. The
但他们
election
没
has
有
already started.
这个权利，因为
Tens
选
of
举已
thousands
经
of people
开
have
始
already
了。
voted. And so the thing that should happen is we should wait. We should
我们应
wait
该
and see
等
what the
待，
outcome of this election is.
等到
Because
选
that's the only
举
way the
结束
American
之
people
後
get to
再
express
提名
their
大法
view
官。
is by who they elect as president and who they elect as vice president. Now, what's at stake here is the president's made it clear he wants to get rid of the Affordable Care Act. He's been running on that. He ran on that.
总统先生非常的明确说，他要去除奥巴马的当时推出的健保。
The Affordable Care Act, which will strip 20 million people from having insurance, health insurance now, if it goes into court, and the justice, and I have nothing. I'm not opposed to the justice. She seems like a very fine person, but she's written before she went on the bench, which is her right, that she thinks that the Affordable Care Act is not constitutional. The other thing is,
巴瑞特认为
if it's struck down,
奥巴
what
马
happens?
当时推出的健
Women's
保不
rights are
符合宪
fundamentally
法。
changed. Once again, a woman could be pay more money because she has a pre-existing condition of pregnancy. They were able to charge a woman more for the same exact procedure a man gets. And that ended when we, in fact, passed the Affordable Care Act.
我们当时推出奥巴马健保的时候，所有的女性还有男性都是付一样的健保费。
Insurance companies are going to love this. And so it's just not appropriate to do this before this election. If he wins
所以
the
在选举
election
之前
and
提
the
名
Senate
大
is
法官
Democrat
是
or
非常
Republican,
不适当的时机
he。goes forward. If not,
There aren't 100 million people with pre-existing conditions. As far as a say is concerned, the people already had their say. Okay, Justice Ginsburg said very powerfully, very strongly, at some point, 10 years ago or so, she said a president and the Senate is elected for a period of time, but a president's elected for 4 years. We're not elected for 3 years. I'm not elected for 3 years. So we have the Senate, we have a president.
he's elected to the next
During
election.
that period of time, we have an opening. I'm not elected for 3 years. I'm elected for 4 years.
川普是在说
100
他
million
不是
people, Joe, the 100 million
当
people
上
is
总统不
totally
是
wrong.
当
I don't
4
know where
年
you。got that number. The bigger problem that you have is that you're going to extinguish 180 million people with their private health care that they're very
That's
happy
simply
with.
not true.
Well, you said
他们
we're
现
going
在
to
两
socialist.
方
We're
在
going to
争执
socialist.
关于健保的问
Gentlemen,
题
we're。now into open discussion.
Open discussion.
Open discussion. Yes, I agree. Go ahead, Vice President.
Number
White.
one, he knows that what I proposed. What I proposed is that we expand Obamacare and we increase it. We do not
我
wipe
提
any.
议
And
要
one
把
of the big
奥巴马
debates we
的
had
健
with
保再扩
23
大。
of my colleagues trying to win the nomination that I won were saying that Biden wanted to allow people to have private insurance still. They can. They do. They will under my proposal.
It's not what you've said,
But
and it's not what
that
your party
is-
has said.
that is simply
your party
a lie.
doesn't say it. Your
That
party
is
wants to
simple.
go socialist
My
medicine.
川
party
普现在
is
在
me.
说他
Right
是
now,
他的
I
提
am
，and they're
案
going
一
to
点都不
dominate you, Joe. You know that.
对
I am the Democratic Party right now. The platform of the
Not according
Democratic
to
Party
Harris.
is what I, in fact, approved of. What I approved of. Now, here's the deal. The deal is that it's going to wipe out pre-existing conditions. And by the way, the 200,000 people that have died on his watch. How many
因
of
为疫
those
情有
have
20万人
survived?
死了。
Well, there's 7
如
million
果
people that
在
contracted
他继
COVID.
续当的话，
What
会
does
有
it
多
mean
少
for
人？
them going forward if you
因为
strike
疫情的
down
关系
the
去世。
Affordable Care Act? And
Joe, you've had
pre-existing conditions.
308,000 military people dying because you couldn't provide them proper health care in the military. So don't tell me
I'm
about
happy
this.
to talk about
And if
this.
you were here,
Look,
it
here's
wouldn't
the
be
deal.
200, it would be 2 million
川
people
普现在在
because you were very
说
late on the draw.
拜登
You
当
didn't
时
want
在
me to
当
ban China,
副总
which
统的
was
时
heavily
候，有很
infected.
多
You
的
didn't
军
want me
人
to
因为没
ban
办法
All right,
付
we're
健保
gentlemen,
去世。
we-
which
no,
was heavily
Mr. President,
You would have been
Mr.
much
President,
later, Joe.
Mr.
Much
President,
later.
Mr.
You're
President.
talking about 2 million people.
You're
Mr.
not gonna be able to
President, as
shut
the
him up.
moderator, we are going to talk about COVID in the next segment, but go ahead.
Let me finish. The point is that the president also is opposed to Roe v. Wade. That's on the ballot as well in the court. And so that's also at stake right now. And so the election is already
You don't know it's
begun.
on the ballot. Why is it on the ballot?
Because
Why is it
you
on the
said
ballot? It's not
you're-
on the ballot.
It's on the ballot in the
I
court.
don't think so.
他们现在在
Well,
讨
there's
论
nothing
谁的
happening
名字
there.
会在
Donald, would you
And you
just
don't
be
那
know
个选票
her
上面。
view on Roe v. Wade. You
I
don't know
don't
her
know.
view.
Well, all right. Let's talk. We got a lot to unpack here, gentlemen. We got a lot of time. So, on health care, and then we'll come back to Roe v. Wade.
All right.
Mr. President, the
现在他
Supreme
们要
Court
讨
will
论健
hear
保。
a case a week after the election in which the Trump administration, along with 18 state attorneys general, are seeking to overturn
That's right.
Obamacare, to end Obamacare. You have spent the last...
Because they want to give good health care.
If I may ask
Go ahead.
my question, sir.
Good health care.
Over the last 4 years, you
在
have
过去
promised
4年
to
当中
repeal and replace Obamacare,
你
but you have never in these 4
承诺
years
要把
come
奥巴
up with
马
a
健保
plan,
去除。
a comprehensive plan
Yes,
to
I have.
replace Obamacare.
Of course I have.
你有提出更
I
好
got
的
rid of the
建议吗？
individual
更好的
mandate.
方案
Excuse
吗？
me. I got rid of the individual mandate, which was a
That is
big
not a
chunk of
comprehensive
Obamacare. That
plan.
is absolutely a big thing. That was the
I
worst
didn't
part of
ask,
Obamacare.
sir.
Chris,
You're
that was the
debating him,
worst
not
part of
me.
Obamacare.
Let me ask my
Well,
question.
I'll ask Joe. The individual mandate was the most unpopular aspect of Obamacare. I got rid of it.
I'd like
and
you
we
to,
will protect
Mr.
people
President,
with
I'm the
pre-existing
moderator of this
conditions.
debate, and I would like you to let me ask my question, and then you can answer your
Go ahead.
question. You, in the course of these 4 years, have never come up with a comprehensive plan
在
to
过去4年当
replace
中，你都还没有
Obamacare,
提出
and
任何
just
可以
this
行的
last
方案
Thursday,
代替掉奥
you
巴马健保。
signed a largely symbolic executive order to protect people with pre-existing conditions 5 days before this debate. So my question, sir, is
5天
what
前你
is
签了
the
一
Trump
份协议，
healthcare
是要
plan?
帮助这些
First of all, I
需要
guess I'm
健保的
debating you,
人。
not him, but that's okay. I'm not surprised.
可以
Let
帮
me
我们
just tell
分析
you
一下
something
吗？
that there's nothing symbolic. I'm cutting drug prices. I'm going with favored nations, which no president has the courage to do because you're going against big pharma.
我把医药的
Drug
药
prices will
费
be coming
减
down
低。
80 or 90%. You could have done it during your 47-year period in government, but you didn't do it. Nobody's done it. So we're cutting health care.
What about
All of the
pre-existing
things that
conditions?
we've done,
He has not cut
insulin.
health
I give
care.
you an example. Insulin. It was destroying families, destroying people because I'm getting it for so cheap.
他现
It's
在在
like water. You
说
want to know the truth? So cheap.
糖尿病
Take a
的
look at
药。
all of the drugs that what we're doing, prescription drug prices. We're going to allow our governors now to go to other countries to buy drugs because
When in
they
fact-
pay just a tiny
As
fraction.
I say,
of
this
what
is
we do.
open discussion.
No,
Let
but
me
this
ask
is
you about,
big.
this
This
you'll
is
be happy,
big stuff.
sir. You'll be happy. I'm about to pick up on one of your points to ask the vice president, which is he points out that you would like to add a public option to Obamacare, and
Yes.
the argument that he makes and other Republicans make is that that is
川普
going to
说
end
希望
private
推出一
insurance
个
and will
民众可以选
ask
的
you the
奥巴马
question.
健保。
It will
Not what your
end
party says, by the way.
It will end private insurance and create a government takeover of health care.
It does not. It's only for
这个
those
方
people
案
who
的
are
话
so
会
poor they
让
qualify for
私人的公
Medicaid.
司
They
被
can get
剔
that
除，然后
free
换成
in
政
most
府来
states, except governors who want to deny people who are poor Medicaid. Anyone who qualifies for Medicare would, Medicaid would automatically be enrolled in the public option. The vast majority of the American people would still not be in that option. Number one.
Joe, you
Number
agreed
two.
with Bernie Sanders, who's far left, on the manifesto,
when
we
you-
call it.
when
And that gives you socialized medicine.
Look, hey,
Are you
I'm
saying
not
you
going to
didn't
listen
agree?
to him. The fact of the matter is, I beat Bernie Sanders.
Not by much.
I beat him a whole hell of a lot. I'm
Not
here.
by
I'm here
much.
standing facing you, old buddy.
Pocahontas would have left
Well,
2 days
I tell
early.
you,
You would have lost every primary.
All he knows how to
on
do
Super
is hurt.
Tuesday. You got
Look,
very lucky.
here's the deal. I got very lucky. I'm going to get very lucky tonight as well. And tonight I'm going to
With
make
what?
sure because
With what?
here's the deal. Here's the deal. The fact is that everything he's saying so far is simply a lie. I'm not here to call out his lies. Everybody knows he's a liar.
But you
I just
agree.
want to
Hey,
make
Joe,
sure.
Joe, you're the liar.
I want to make sure.
Graduated last in your class, not first in your class.
I want to make
Mr.
sure.
President, can you let him finish, sir?
No, he doesn't know how to do that. He has,
You'd be
you know,
surprised.
you
刚才
pick-
主持人
the
说
wrong guy, the
希望
wrong
川
night
普
at the
让
wrong
拜登继续
Listen,
讲，
you
然后
agreed
拜
with
登
Bernie
说
Sanders
他不知道怎么做
The whole。idea-
Let him-
disavowing it.
There is no manifesto, number
Please
one.
let him speak, Mr.
Number
President.
two.
You just lost the left.
Number two.
You just lost the left.
你
You
失去了左
agreed
派的
with
人。
Bernie Sanders on a plan.
Folks,
that's absolutely
folks,
agreed
do you have
to,
any
and under that
idea
plan,
what
you have
this clown's
socialized,
doing?
They call it
Mr.
Do you
Medicare.
have any
President.
do?
Socialized medicine.
Mr.
Well, I
President.
tell you what, he is not for any help for people needing
他不
health
是
care.
要帮任何人得到健保。
Because he, in fact, already has cost 10 million people their health care that they had
因
from
为
their
他已经
employers
造成
because of
很
his
上百
recession.
人、
Number
上百
one.
万
Number
人
two, there are
没办法得到
20
健
million
保。
people getting health care through Obamacare now that he wants to take it away. He won't ever look you in the eye and say that's what he wants to do. Take
他
it
想要做的
away.
事情就是把
Number
健
three.
保
Healthcare at a much
去
lower
除，
price.
然后让
Because
美国人民
he
受
doesn't know
惠。
how. He doesn't know how
I've
to do
already
that.
fixed it.
He has never
I've
offered
already
a
fixed
plan.
it to an extent.
He has never
Obamacare,
done a
as you
single
might
thing.
know, but probably don't.
Gentlemen,
Gentlemen, you
Obamacare
realize
is no
if you're
good,
both
Joe.
speaking at the
It's no
same
good,
time,
and it's too expensive.
let the president go ahead, sir.
双方都在讲
Obamacare is
话，
no
主
good.
持人
We
说
made
都
it
听不
better,
到你们
and
在
I had a
讲些
choice
什
to
么
make
事
very
情。
early on. We took away the individual mandate. We guaranteed pre-existing conditions, but took away the individual
true.
mandate. Listen, this is the way it is, and that destroyed. That they shouldn't even call it Obamacare. Then I had a choice to make. Do I let my people run it really well, or badly? If I run it badly, they'll probably blame him, but they'll blame me. But more importantly, I want to help people. Okay? I said you got to
最重要
run
的
it
议
so
题是我
well.
想要帮
And
助
I
人民。
just had a meeting with them. They said the problem is no matter how well you run Obamacare, it's a
不管你
disaster. It's too expensive.
Okay.
Premiums
能把
are
这
too
个
high.
奥巴马
That
健保
doesn't work.
That's what
So
his people
we
said.
we
执
do
行
want
的
to
多
get rid
好
of it.，
大家都是还是
Chris, we
怪
want to
罪
get
我
rid。of it.
I
and
understand
give
it, sir, but
something
I have
that's
to
cheaper and
give
better.
you roughly equal time.
Good.
Please let the vice president talk.
Good.
He has no plan for health care.
Of course we do.
Sends,
他没有任何
sends
的健保
out
的方案。
wishful thinking. He has executive orders that have no power. He hasn't lowered drug costs for anybody. He's been
他没有
promising
任
a health
他
care
没有降低
plan
任何人
since
的
he
药
got
物价
elected. He
钱。
has none. Like almost everything else he talks about. He does not have a plan. He
像是
doesn't
他
have a
所有
plan.
讲过的话
And the
都
fact
没有
is,
任
this
何
man
的
doesn't
方
know
案
what
或
he's
计
talking
划。
about.
All right,
He's
I
against
have one final question for you,
Sure.
Mr. Vice President. If Senate Republicans, we were talking originally about the Supreme Court here, if Senate Republicans go ahead and confirm Justice Barrett, there has been talk about ending the filibuster or even packing the court, adding to the 9 justices there. You call this a distraction by the president, but in fact it wasn't brought up by the president. It was brought up by some of your Democratic colleagues in the Congress. So my question to you is, you have refused in the past to talk about it. Are you willing to tell the American people tonight whether or not you will support either ending the filibuster or packing the court?
Whatever position I take on that, that'll become the issue.
如
The
果
issue is the
提名
American
或
people should speak.
获得认
You
同
should
的
go
话
out，and
你会
vote.
支持吗？
You're in voting now. Vote and let your senators know how strongly you feel. Vote now.
拜登现在在呼吁民众去投票，让大家
I'm not going to answer the question.
让大家知道他们的
The question is,
民怨。
the question is, the
radical left.
他们希望谁
Listen, who is on your list, Joe?
This
Who's
is
on your
so
list?
你的名单上有谁？川普在问。
He's going to pack the court.
We
He's
have
not going to give a list.
We have ended this segment. We're going to move on to the second segment.
That was really
现在来到第二题。
Keep yapping, man.
The people understand, Joe.
They sure do.
47 years you've done nothing. They understand.
All right.
47年都没有做到任何事
Is
情。
COVID-19, which is an awfully serious subject. So
现在要来谈疫
let's try to
情
be。serious about it. We have had more than 7 million cases of coronavirus in the United States, and more than 200,000 people have died. Even after we produce a vaccine, experts say that it could be
美国
months
境内有
or even
700万
years
人得到
before
疫
we
情，然
come
后有
back
20
to
万人
anything
去世。
approaching normal. My question for both of you is, based on what you have said and done so far, and what you have said you would do starting in 2021, why should the American people trust you
为什
more
么
than
美国民众
your
要相
opponent
信你
to deal with this
关于疫情方
public
面的
health
政
crisis
策
going forward? In this case,
会
the
可行
question
呢？
goes to you first, sir. 2 minutes uninterrupted.
Good luck. 200,000 dead. As
20
you
万
said,
人
over
去世
7 million infected in the United States.
700万人是
We, in fact, have 5%, 4% of the world's population, 20% of the deaths. 40,000 people a day are contracting COVID. In addition to that, about between 750 and 1,000 people a day are dying. When he was presented with that number, he said, it is
当这
what
个
it
数
is.
字
Well, it
提
is
到
what it is because
川普
you
那
are
边
who
的时
you
候，
are. That's why it is. The president has no plan.
川普完
He
全没有
hasn't
任
laid
何
out
政策。
anything. He knew all the way back in February how serious
去
this
年12月他
crisis
就
was.
知道这个
He
疫情
knew
有
it
多
was
严
a
重。
deadly disease. What did he do?
他
He's
做了什
on
么？
tape as acknowledging he knew it. He said he didn't tell us or give people a warning of it because he didn't want to panic the American
他完
people.
全没跟我们讲，他
You
知
don't
道
panic.
有疫情
He
的，
panicked. In
是因为
addition to
他
that,
完
what
全
did he do?
被这疫
He
情
went
吓
in
到
and
了。
we were insisting
然
that
后
the
想要保
Chinese,
护美国
the
民众。
people we had on the ground in China should be able to go to Wuhan and determine for themselves how dangerous this was. He did not even ask Xi to do that. He told us what a great job Xi was doing. He said we owe him a debt of gratitude for being so transparent with us. And what did he do then? He then did nothing. He waited and waited and waited. He still doesn't have a plan.
他还在
I
一直
laid
等，然后
out
到
back
现
in
在都没有任何
March
政策。
exactly what we should be doing. And I laid out again in July what we should be doing.
我7月
We
的时候
should
就
be
已经
providing
提
all
出
the
了可行的
protective gear
方案
possible. We。should be providing the money the House has passed in order to be able to go out and get people the help they need to keep their businesses open. Open
我们
schools
需要
that
用
cost a lot of money.
资
You
金
should
去
get out of
帮
your
助
bunker and get out of the
受困
sand
受害
trap
的
and
民
get
众，
in your golf course and go in the Oval Office
而
and
不是
bring
像
together
你
the
在
Democrats and Republicans and
高尔夫
fund
球
what
场
needs
上
to be done now to
享受。
save lives.
So if we would have listened to
Wait,
you,
you have 2 minutes, sir.
if we would have listened to you, the country would have been left wide open. Millions of people would have died, not 200,000, and one person is too much. It's China's fault. It should have never happened. They stopped it from going in, but it was China's fault. And by the way, when you talk about numbers, you don't know how many people died in China. You don't know how many people died in Russia. You don't know how many people died in India. They don't exactly give you a straight count, just so you understand. But if you look at what we've done, I closed it, and you said he's xenophobic. He's a racist, and he's xenophobic. Because you didn't think I should have closed our country.
No,
Wait a minute.
it says 2 minutes.
You didn't think we should have closed our country because you thought it was terrible. You wouldn't have closed it for another 2 months. By my doing it early, in fact, Dr. Fauci said, President Trump saved thousands of lives. Many of your Democrat governors said, President Trump did a phenomenal job. We worked with the governor. Oh, really? Go take a look.
很多民主党的人都说，
I did a
川普总
phenomenal
统做
job.
得非
Most
常
of
好
them。said that. In fact, people that would not be necessarily on my side said that. President
就算
Trump
不
did
支
a
持我的
phenomenal
人都说
job.
川
We
普
did.
总统
We
做得
got the
非常
gowns.
好
We。got the masks. We made the ventilators. You wouldn't have made ventilators. And now we're weeks
我们
away
制造
from
出
a
了面
vaccine.
罩啊，呼
We're
吸
doing
器啊。
therapeutics already. Fewer people are dying
像
when they
你就
get
不
sick.
会制造这
Far
些。
fewer people are dying. We've done a great job. The only thing I haven't done a good job, and that's because of the fake news. No matter what you say to them, they give you bad press on it. It's just fake news. They give you good press. They give me bad press because that's the way it is, unfortunately. But let me just tell you something. I don't care. I've gotten used to it. But I'll tell you, Joe, you could never have done the job that we did. You don't have it in your blood. You could have never done that job.
I know how to do the job. I know how to get the job
Well, you didn't do very well in swine flu. H1N1, you were a disaster. Your own chief said you were a disaster.
14,000 people died, not 200,000. There was
no economic recession.
You made a point.
You
made a point. Let him answer.
And there was we didn't shut down the economy. This is his economy he shut down. The reason it's shut down is because, look, you folks at home, how many of you get up this morning and had an empty chair at the kitchen table because someone died of COVID? How many of you were in a situation where you lost your mom or dad and you couldn't even speak to them? You had a nurse holding the phone up so you could, in fact, say goodbye.
You would have lost far more people. Far more people. You would have been
and by the way,
months late.
Your own, his own CDC director says we could lose as many as another 200,000 people between now and the end of the year. And he held up. He said, if we just wear a mask, we can save half those numbers. Just a mask. And by the way, in terms of the whole notion of a vaccine. We're for a vaccine, but I don't trust him at all, nor do you.
我完全不相信川普会制造出疫苗。
You don't trust Dr. Johnson, Pfizer.
Okay, by the way, gentlemen, let me move on to questions about the future because you both have touched on two of the questions I'm going to ask. Focusing on the future first, President Trump, you have repeatedly either contradicted or been at odds with some of your government's own top scientists. The week before last.
在过去的时候，关于疫情的时候，你常常跟你自己那个人有冲突。
Summer before the vaccine would become generally available to the public. You said that he was confused and mistaken. Those were your two words.
Yeah.
But Dr. Slaoui, the head of your Operation Warp Speed, has said exactly the same thing. Are they both wrong?
Well, I've spoken to the companies and we can have it a lot sooner. It's a very political thing because people like this would rather make it political than save lives. It is a very political thing.
像是拜登就是会把疫情变成是政治游戏。我只是想要帮助人。
We have great Moderna, Johnson & Johnson, and others. They can go faster than that by a lot. Become very political because the left, or I don't know if I call them left, I don't know what I call them.
So you're suggesting that the head of your Operation Warp Speed, Dr. Slaoui?
I disagree with him. Yeah, no, I disagree with both of them. And he didn't say that. He said it could be there, but it could also be much sooner. I had him in my office 2 days ago.
我的那个说疫苗其实是可以很快就制造出来。
He said it's a possibility that we'll have the answer before November 1st. It could also be after that. Well, we're going to deliver it right away. We have the military all set up logistically. They're all set up. We have our military that delivers soldiers, and they can do 200,000 a day. They're going to be delivering the vaccine.
This is the same man
it's
who
all
told
set
you
up.
By Easter this would be gone away. By the warm weather it'd be gone. Miraculous, like a miracle. And by the way, maybe you could inject some bleach in your arm, and that would take care of it. This is the same man.
That was said sarcastically, and you know that. That was said sarcastically.
And so here's the deal. This man is talking about a vaccine. Every serious company is talking about maybe having a vaccine done by the end of the year. But the distribution of that vaccine will not occur until sometime beginning or the middle of next year to get it out, if we get the vaccine. And pray God we will. Pray God we will.
Mr. Vice President, I want to pick up
You'll have the vaccine sooner.
I want to pick up on this question, though. You say the public can trust the scientists, but they can't trust President Trump. In fact, you said that again tonight. Your running mate, Senator Harris, goes further, saying that public health experts, quote, will be suppressed. Given the fact that polls already show that people are concerned about the vaccine and are reluctant to take it, are you and your running mate, Senator Harris, contributing to that fear?
No more than the question you just asked. You pointed out he puts pressure and disagrees with his own scientists.
But you're saying everybody you can't, Senator Harris is saying you can't trust the scientists.
You can't trust the scientists. She didn't say that. You can't trust
She said that public health experts, quote, will be muzzled, will be suppressed.
Well, that's what he's going to try to do. But there's millions of scientists, there's thousands of scientists out there, like here at this great hospital, that don't work for him. Their job doesn't depend on him. That's not.
有上千万名的科学家，他们的工作其实不受总统的
Do you believe for a moment what he's telling you, in light of all the lies he's told you about the whole issue relating to COVID.
关于所有的疫情关系的谎言，川普曾经都说过的。
Back in February, and he didn't. He's on record as saying it. He panicked, or he just looked at the stock market.
川普完全都没有跟你们讲关于疫情的事情，因为他整个愣住了。
He gets a lot smarter, a lot quicker.
Mr. President,
did you use the word smart? So you said you went to Delaware State, but you forgot the name of your college. You didn't go to Delaware State. You graduated either the lowest or almost the lowest in your class. Don't ever use the word smart.
川普现在在呛拜登，他当时大学毕业的时候是倒数。
47 years you've done nothing.
Let's have this debate.
And if you would have had, let me just tell you something, Joe. If you would have had the charge of what I was put through. I had to close the greatest economy in the history of our country. And by the way, now it's being built again. And it's going up.
我们现在已经开始复工了，经济已经在复苏当中了。
Okay. When it comes to how the virus has been handled so far, the two of you have taken very different approaches, and this is going to affect how the virus is handled going forward by whichever of you ends up becoming the next president. I want to quickly go through several of those. Reopenings. Vice President Biden, you have been much more reluctant than President Trump about reopening the economy and schools. Why, sir?
Because you don't have a plan. If I were running, I know what the plan is. You've got to provide these businesses the ability to have the money to be able to reopen with the PPE as well as with the sanitation they need. You have to provide them plastic.
Tell that to Nancy Pelosi.
Well, he's just shush for a minute.
Tell it to Nancy Pelosi and Schumer.
By the way, Nancy Pelosi and Schumer, they have a plan. He won't even meet with them. The Republicans won't meet with the Senate. And he sits on his golf course. And I mean, literally, think about it.
参议员啊，所有的政府官员都不愿跟川普见面。
Well, he wants to shut down this country, and I want to keep it open. And we did a great job by shutting it down. Wait a minute, let me shut you down for a second, just for 1 second. He wants to shut down the country. We just went through it. We had to because we didn't know anything about the disease. Now we found that elderly people with heart problems and diabetes and different problems are very, very vulnerable. We learned a lot. Young children aren't. Even younger people aren't. We've learned a lot. But he wants to shut it down. More people will be hurt by continuing. If you look at Pennsylvania, if you look at certain states that have been shut down, they have Democrat governors all. One of the reasons they're shut down is because they want to keep it shut down until after the election on November 3rd.
I want to move on to another
because
subject.
It's a political but those states are not doing well that are shut down.
President Trump, you have begun to increasingly question the effectiveness of masks as a disease preventer. And in fact, recently you have cited the issue of waiters touching their masks and touching plates. Are you questioning the efficacy of masks?
You have to understand, if you look, I mean, I have a mask right here. I'll put a mask on, when I think I need it. Tonight, as an example, everybody's had a test, and you've had social distancing and all of the things that you have to. But I wear masks when needed. When needed, I wear masks.
Okay, let me ask.
I don't wear masks like him. Every time you see him, he's got a mask. He could be speaking 200 feet away from it, he shows up with the biggest mask I've ever seen. I will say this.
Vice President Biden, go ahead, sir.
Look, the way to open businesses is give them the wherewithal to be able to open. We provided money.
唯一让经济复苏的话，就是要提供所有的防疫措施。
Masks make a big difference. His own head of the CDC said, if we just wore masks between now, if everybody wore masks in social distance between now and January, we probably save up to 100,000 lives.
从一开始就戴口罩的话，就是上百人都不会因为疫情关系得到肺炎。
No serious.
Dr. Fauci. Dr. Fauci said the opposite.
He did not say the opposite.
We got a little bit more than a minute left in this segment.
Masks are not good. Then he changed his mind. He said masks good. I'm okay
我
with
自己的
masks.
科学家说
one last
口罩不好。
subject because your different approaches has even affected the way that you have campaigned. President Trump, you're holding large rallies with crowds packed together, thousands of people. Outside, yes, sir, agreed. Vice President Biden, you are holding much smaller events with...
Because nobody will show up.
People with...
What's true? Nobody
拜
shows up
登
to
你
his
的
rally.
竞选活动都是比较小的，然后川普就呛他，因为没有人想要来。
You goes first, sir.
Because people want to hear what I have to say. I mean,
But are you not
I've done a
worried
great
about us
job
spreading
as a
the
我的
faith?
竞选场合会有很多人，是因为大家都想要来听我讲什么事情。
We use airports.
Are you
and
not worried
hangars,
about
and we
the
have a
disease
lot of
issues,
people.
sir?
Well, so far we have had no problem whatsoever. It's outside. That's a big difference, according to the experts.
我的竞选场合没有任何人得到肺炎，是因为我们都是在户外办的。
I mean, and literally on 24 hours notice. And Joe does the circles and has 3 people someplace.
Okay.
By the way, did you see
sir.
one of the last big rallies he has? And a reporter came up to him to ask him a question. He said,
上一
"No, no,
次
no, stand back.
川普
Put
的
on your
竞选
mask.
活动，
Put
有
on a
记者
mask.
想要来问他，
You've been tested.
川普竟然就叫
I'm
那个记者
way far away from those other people.
倒退几步，然后
That's what
戴
he
口
said.
罩才
I
可以
can't.
访问
I'm
我
going to。be okay. He's not worried about you. He's not worried about the people out there breathing in one another.
We've had no
他不是
negative
担心
effect.
任何
No
人
negative，effect.
We've had no
他只是
negative
在
effect.
担心
And we've
自
had
己。
35,
All right.
40,000
You
people
want
at
to
these rallies.
just
Yes.
quickly finish up because I want to move on to our next.
Yes, I would. He's been totally irresponsible the way in which he has handled
他完全不负责任关于疫
social
情的方面。
distancing and people wearing masks, basically encourage them not to.
All right.
He's a fool on this.
If you could get
That's
the
a good-
crowds, you would have done the same thing. But you can't. Nobody cares.
Gentlemen, can we move on to the
Nobody cares.
gentlemen? Can we move on to the economy?
Yes.
The economy is, I think it's fair to say, recovering faster than expected from the shutdown.
Much
This-
faster.
经济
In the
复
second
苏
quarter,
其
the
实
unemployment rate
进行
fell
的
to
速度非常的快。
8.4% last month. The Federal Reserve says the hit to growth, which is going to be there, is not going to be nearly as big as they had expected. President Trump, you say we are in a V-shaped recovery.
川普总统，
Vice
你说我
President
们现
Biden,
在
you
的
say
经济
it's
复
more
苏
of
是
a
V 型
K-shape.
的。
What difference does that mean to
你
the
们双
American
方
people in terms of the
的
economy?
关
President
于
Trump,
复
in
苏的
this
想
segment, you
法
go
不一
first.
样，
So
请
we
分析
built
一
the
下。
greatest economy in history. We closed it down because of the China plague. When the plague came in, we closed it down, which was
我们
very
关闭我们
hard
的境内
psychologically
所有
to
的
do.
经
He
济，
didn't
是
think we
因
should
为
close it
中国
down.
大
He
陆
was
的疫
wrong.
情。
And again, 2 million people would be dead now instead of still 204,000 people is too much. One person is too much. Should have never happened from China. But what happened is
这疫
we
情其
closed
实
it down and now we're reopening.
真的
And we're
不
doing
应该在
record
中国发
business.
生。
We had 10.4 million people in a 4-month period that we've put back into the workforce. That's a record the likes of which nobody's ever seen before. And he wants to close down he will shut it down again. He will destroy
拜
this
登还想
country.
继
You
续
know, a lot
关
of
禁，
people between drugs and alcohol and depression.
这样子
When
会
you
害
start
到
shutting
更
it
多
down,
人。
you take a look at what's happening at some of your Democrat-run states where they have these tough shutdowns. And I'm telling you, it's because they don't want to open it. One of them came out last week. You saw that. Oh, we're going to open up on November 9th. Why November 9th? Because it's after the election. They think they're hurting us by keeping them closed. They're hurting people. People
如果
know what
关
to
禁
do.
的话，
They
其
can
实是
social
会害
distance.
到
They can wash
人
their
民。
hands. They can wear masks. They can do whatever they want. But they got to open these states up.
但是
When you
必
look
须
at
要
North
开启
Carolina,
所有
when you
的
look
禁
at，these governors
所
are
有的
under
人
siege.
才会得到经济
Pennsylvania,
复苏。
Michigan, and a couple of others. You got to open these states up. It's not fair. You're talking about almost it's like being in prison. And you look at what's going on with divorce. Look at what's going on with alcoholism and drugs. It's a very,
看看
very
离
sad
婚率，
thing.
看看
And he'll close
用
down
药
the whole
率，还有
country. This guy
酗
will
酒
close down
率
the。whole country and destroy our country. Our
他
country
会
is
毁了
coming
这一
back
个美
incredibly
国
well,
家。
setting records as it does it. We don't need somebody to come in and say, let's shut it down.
All right.
我们不
Your
需
2
要
minutes,
有
sir.
任何
We
人
now
进
move
来
to
就说
you.
我们要关禁。
As I said, posing the question, the president says it's a V-shaped recovery. You say it's a K-shaped recovery.
你说
What's
经
the
济复
difference?
苏是个
Difference
K
is
型，
millionaires and
差别在
billionaires
哪
like
里？
him in the middle of the COVID crisis have done very well. Billionaires have made another $300 billion because of his profligate tax proposal, and he only focused on the market. But you folks at home,
川普
you
只
folks
是
living in
关心
Scranton,
在
Claymont,
市
and all
场
the
上
small。towns and working class towns in America, how well are you doing? This guy paid
Well,
a
美
total
国
of
民众，你们好吗？
$750 in taxes.
Sir, wait, no, sir, it's
It's
just
the wrong
yeah, I
statement.
understand. You've agreed to the 2 minutes, so please let him have it.
Do I get my time back? The fact is that he has, in fact, worked on this in a way that he's going to be the first president of the United States to leave office having fewer jobs in his
他会
administration
成为第
than
一
when he
个美国
became
总
president.
统离职
Fewer
之后
jobs than when he became president. First one in American history.
失业率最
Secondly,
高的。
the people who have lost their jobs are those people who have been on the front lines. Those people who have been saving our lives. Those
失
people
去
who
工
have
作
gone
的
out
人
there
都是
dying.
在
People
救
who've
大
been
家的
putting
人，
themselves in the way
像
to make
是第一
sure
线的
that we
工
could
作
all
人
try
员
to。make it. And the idea that he is insisting that we go forward and open when you have almost half the states in America with a significant increase in COVID deaths and COVID cases in the United States of America.
受到疫情影响的人会更多。
Why does he want to open it up? Why doesn't he take care of the American? You can't fix the economy until you fix the COVID crisis. And he has no intention of doing anything about making it better for you all at home in terms of your health and your safety. Schools. Why aren't schools open? Because it costs a lot of money to open them safely.
校园为什么没有开启？因为要开启学校的话，要花很多资金。
Then they decided no, couldn't do that because it's not a national emergency. Not a national emergency.
因为不是国家危机，所以学校不用开。
Nothing. They're closing. 1 in 6 is now gone. He ought to get on the job and take care of the needs of the American people so we can open safely.
需要先照顾美国民众才可以开禁。
Well, you both had 2 minutes, sir.
Excuse me, he made a statement.
So did you.
People want their schools. No, people want their schools open. They don't want to be shut down.
学生希望回学校啊，不希望所有的学校都关闭。
It's so sad what's happening in New York. It's almost like a ghost town, and I'm not sure it can ever
像是纽约
recover what they've
几乎
done
像
in
是
New
鬼
York.
城，非常的
People want their
可
places
怜。
open. They want to get back to their lives.
People
They'll
want
be
to be
careful,
safe.
but
民
they
众
want
希
their
望回到
schools
他们
open.
以前的
I'm
生
the
活
one。that brought back football. By the way, I brought back Big Ten football. It was me, and I'm very happy to do it. And
All right,
people of Ohio are very proud of me. And you know how I found out? When he took a phony
Gentlemen, we're going to
ad.
get to your economic plans going forward in a moment. But first, Mr. President, as you well know, there's a new report that in 2016, the year you were elected president, and 2017,
主持人现在在问川普总统的缴税记录。
$750 a year in
你
federal
2016年到
income
2017 年
tax
只付了
each of those
750 美
years.
元。
I know that you pay a lot of other taxes, but I'm
我知道你付
asking you
很
the
多其他的
specific
税
question.
金。
Is it true that you paid $750
但是这个
in
750
federal
元美金
income
是真的
taxes
吗？
each of those 2 years?
I paid millions of dollars in taxes, millions of dollars of income tax.
我付
And let me
我
just
付
tell you,
上百万的
there
税
was a
金。
story in one of the papers.
Show us your tax
I paid
returns.
$38 million one year. I paid $27 million
Show us your tax
one year.
returns.
I went.
拜登希
you'll
望
see it as
川
soon
普
as it's
秀
finished.
出
You'll
他
see
的
it.
缴
You
税
want
单
to。do, go to the Board of Elections. There's a 118-page or so report that
你
says
可以去
everything
看看
I
啊，我有
have, every bank I
180页
have, I'm
所
totally
有我缴过的
under-leveraged
税
because
金。
the assets are extremely good, and we have a I built
Sir,
a great
I'm asking
company.
you a specific question, which
But
is...
let me tell you.
I understand all of that.
Release your
I
tax
understand all of
return.
that.
But let me-
No, Mr. President.
Go ahead.
I'm asking you a question. Will you tell us how much you paid in federal income taxes in 2016 and 2017?
你可以告诉我们
Millions of dollars.
2016年到
Millions of
2017年到底
dollars.
付了多少税金？
And you'll get to see it.
川普说
And you'll
他
get to
付了
see it.
上百亿。
But let me just
Inshallah.
tell you, Chris, let me just tell you something, that it was the tax laws. I don't want to pay tax. Before I came here,
我不
I
希望
was a
付税
private
金啊
developer. I was a private business people.
我以前
Like
是一个
every other private
私人
person,
公
unless
司
they're stupid, they go through the laws, and that's what it is. He passed a tax bill that gave us all these privileges for depreciation and for tax
是因为拜
credits.
登
We
之
built
前
a building and we get
提
tax
议了一
credits like the
个
hotel on Pennsylvania Avenue. You get a
宪法，
massive,
所以
which, by the way,
我们
was
这些
given
有
to
钱的
me
人就
by
可以
the Obama
不用付那么多
administration,
的
if
税
you can
金。
believe that. Now, the man got fired
no.
right after that happened. But
Vice
that's
President Biden, you want to respond?
Yeah, I do want to respond. Look, the tax code that made him, put him in a position that he pays less tax than a school teacher.
那次的宪法让他可以付的比教师还少的税金，是因
He
为
says he's smart because he can take advantage of the tax code. And he
是因为
does take
川普很
advantage
聪
of
明，
the
可
tax
以
code. That's
找
why
到漏
I'm going to
洞。
eliminate the Trump tax cuts. And we're going
我要
to
去除
eliminate those
这
tax cuts
种
and make sure that we invest
做法。
in the people who, in fact, need the help. People out there need help.
But why didn't you do it over the last 25 years?
Because
那为什么
Why
你
did
过
you
去
do it?
25年没
you
有
are
做到这件
president
事情？
screwing things up.
You were a senator, and
You're
by
the
the way,
worst
you were a
president
vice.
America has ever had.
Hey,
Come
Joe,
on.
let me just tell you, Joe.
拜
I've
登在
done
说
more
川普
in
是美国有
in
史以来最
47 months. I've
惨
done
的
more
总
than you've
统，
done in
做的最
47
糟糕
years,
的
Joe.
总统。
We've done things that you never even thought of doing,
Okay,
including
gentlemen.
fixing the broken military that you gave me, including taking care of
We're
your
talking,
我
vets.
做得
Mr.
很
President,
好，
we're
像
talking
是
about the
我
economy. I'd like to
把
ask you
军
about
队都
your
提升
plans
了，不
going
像你之
forward.
前做的那么烂。
Because, Mr. Vice President, your economic plan, if you were to be
Yes,
elected
ma'am.
president, focuses a lot on big government, big taxes, big spending. I want to focus first on the taxes. You propose more than $4 trillion over a decade in new taxes on individuals making more than $400,000 a year and on corporations. President Trump says that that kind of an increase in taxes is going to hurt the economy as it's just coming out of a recession.
Well, just take a look at what the analysis done by Wall Street firms points out that my economic plan would create 7 million more jobs than his in 4 years, number one. And number two, it would create an additional $1 trillion in economic growth because it would be about buying American. That we're going to make this federal government spend $600 billion a year on everything from ships to steel to buildings and the like. And under my proposal, we're going to make sure that every penny of that has to be made by a company
but respectfully, sir, I'm talking about taxes, not spending.
By the way, I'm going to eliminate a significant number of the tax. I'm going to make the corporate tax 28%. It shouldn't be 21%. You have 91 companies, in the Fortune 500 who don't pay a single penny in tax, making billions of dollars.
Why didn't you do it?
像是很多大公司完全都没有付任何税金。
That was your tax
proposal. Got it done, and you know what happened?
You got it done.
Our economy boomed like it's never boomed.
The economy is busted.
Mr. President, let me pick up on that. You would continue your free market approach, lower taxes, more deregulation, correct?
Not lower taxes of American people.
Excuse me.
But in Obama's, you talk about the economy booming. It turns out that in Obama's final 3 years as president, more jobs were created, 1.5 million more jobs than in the first 3 years of your presidency.
They had the slowest recovery economic recovery since 1929. It was the slowest recovery. Also, they took over something that was down here. All you had to do is turn on the lights and you pick up a lot. But they had the slowest economic recovery since 1929. Let me tell you about the stock market. When the stock market goes up, that means jobs. It also means 401ks. If you ever became president with your ideas, you want to terminate my taxes, I'll tell you what, you'll lose half of the companies that have poured in here will leave, and plenty of companies that are already here, they'll leave for other places. They will leave, and you will have a depression the likes of which you've never seen.
Look, we inherited the worst recession short of a depression in American history. I was asked to bring it back. We were able to have an economic recovery that created the jobs you're talking about. We handed him a booming economy. He blew it. He
让经济复苏非常的快，而且有很多工作都回来了。
Well, sir, is it fair to say he blew it when, in fact, when there was record low unemployment before COVID?
Yeah, but because before COVID, manufacturing went in a hole.
Excuse me, Chris. Wait.
Number two.
Chris.
Number three.
They said it would take. No, you're on number two.
No.
Chris. They said it would take a miracle to bring back manufacturing. I brought back 700,000 jobs. They brought back nothing. They gave up on manufacturing. Stand it fair.
I'm the guy that brought back the automobile industry. We brought back.
拜登完全放弃了生产业。
Chrysler and General Motors. We brought them back right here in the state of Ohio and Michigan. He blew it. They're gone. He blew it. And in fact, they're gone.
拜登在说川普整个搞砸了，因为一些生产业都已经离开了。
That is not
Many
true.
car companies came in from Germany, from Japan, went to Michigan, went to Ohio.
They're not having.
And they didn't
川
come
普在
in.
说有很多公司从日本啊、德国都来美国。
He's done very little. His trade deals are the same way. He talks about
拜
these
登在
great
说
trade
川普
deals.
的
He talks about the art of the deal.
贸
China
易
has
协议
perfected the art of the steal. We have a higher deficit with China now than we did before. We have the highest trade deficit.
China
with
ate
Mexico.
your lunch, down
All right, gentlemen,
18%. China ate your lunch, Joe, and no wonder your son goes in and he takes out
川普现在在说拜登的儿子的丑闻。
billions of dollars to manage. He makes millions of dollars.
他透过中国大陆的北京当局赚了多少钱呢？
The mayor of Moscow's wife gave your son $3.5 million. What did he do to deserve it?
之前莫斯科的副总统，莫斯科的副市长给你儿子350万美金，这是什么回事？
None of that is true.
Oh, really?
Totally,
But no, Mr. President,
it's
Mr. President, please.
totally discredited. totally discredited. And by
拜
the
登在
way,
说这完全是假新闻。
Mr. Vice,
He got
Mr.
$3.5
President,
million.
that is not true.
Oh, really?
Mr.
Oh.
President,
But,
it's an open discussion, please.
Now,
It's a fact.
Well,
There's-
you
it is
have
not a
raised an
fact.
issue. Let the
It's been
Vice
totally
President answer.
discredited.
Did
There was a
Burisma pay him
report.
$183,000 a month with no experience in
川普还
energy?
继续在说
My son
拜
did
登的儿
nothing
子的
wrong
丑
at
闻。
Burisma,
I think he
and
did.
Mr.
the only
President,
guy that
let
did
him
something-
answer.
He doesn't want to let me answer because he knows I have the truth. His
对
position has been totally,
川普
thoroughly
By who?
discredited.
主持人一直在制止
By everybody.
川普
By the
By the
media,
media,
希望
by our
拜登可以
allies,
回
by
答
the World
Because they're
Bank,
embarrassed.
by everyone has discredited. Matter of fact,
所有人都已经
even the
出来
people
证
who
实
testified
这件事情是个
under
假
oath.
新闻。
So let me
Under
ask you
oath.
this,
Henry,
Joe.
under
No,
oath.
go ahead, Mr. I'm listening to
Even the
you.
people under,
He got $3.5
he
million from
testified-
Moscow.
he
川普还
testified
继续
under
在
oath in
说
his
这个
administration
350万美
said,
金
I
的
did my job and I
丑
did
闻
it。very well.
Oh,
I did
really?
it
I'd like to know who
honorably.
they are.
Well, I'll give you the list of
I'll
the
fire
people who
them.
testified.
No, go ahead, sir.
Sure,
我可以
you've
提
already
供
fired
证
most
实
of
这
them
一件
because
事
they
情
did a
是
good
假
job.
新闻的
Some people
人
don't do a
Well,
good
here's
job.
的名单。
With you,
Go
they
ahead.
say
You get
they're
the,
good
wait a
job.
minute. You get the final word, Mr.
Well, it's hard to get any word in with this clown. Excuse me, this.
Hey,
this
let me just
person.
tell you.
No. Mr. President,
Three
I'm
and
在
a half
川普旁边，我
million.
非常的难
That
讲
is
话。
simply
Why did he
not true.
deserve $3.5 million
It
from
did-
Moscow?
Look, here's the
川
deal.
普现在在
We
问
wanna
为什么
talk
他当时
about
会拿了这
families
350
and
万美
ethics.
金。
I don't want to do that. I mean, his family we could talk about all night. His family's
My
already.
family,
No, let him go.
my family
拜登现在
lost a
说，如果要
fortune
谈
coming
家人
down
的
and
话，我
helping
们
us with government.
如果要谈川普的家人，可以谈一整晚
Every。single one of them lost
This
a
is not
fortune
about
President.
my
coming and
family or his
helping us
family.
with
It's
government.
about your family,
They
the
didn't
American
collect
people.
$3.5 million.
现在我们
Doesn't-
不是要
that's
讨论
not true. It doesn't
川普或
want
是
to
我
talk
的家
about
人，
what
现在是要
you
讨论
need.
美国
You,
民
the
众
American。people. It's about you. That's
是
what we're
关于
talking
美
about.
国
All
民
right,
众。
that's
Not
the end
about
of the,
here.
that's the end of the
Shouldn't have
segment.
taken the money.
We're moving on.
He didn't take them.
Well,
Vice
it's a
President-
主持人现在说要换到下一题，
Try to be honest.
但是川普还继续
No,
在
the
讲
answer
这
to
件
the
丑
question is
闻。
no.
Ukraine.
No, sir.
With $1 billion, if you don't
That
get rid of
is
the trust,
You know what? You're-
absolutely
wait,
not
stop.
true.
You're-
拜登一
You're
直
gonna
在
have-
True.
呼吁
Gentlemen.
这件事是假新
I
闻。
hate to raise my
Chris,
voice, but
he's
it
on
seems
tape.
to be, why should I be different than the two of you? So here's the
That's a
deal.
good point.
We have 6 segments. We have ended that segment. We're going to go to the
我们
next
现在要
segment.
换到
In
下
that
一个主题
segment,
了。
you each are going to have 2 uninterrupted moments. In
接
those 2
下来
uninterrupted
前
minutes,
面
Mr.
2分
President,
钟，
you
你们
can
每
say
个人都
anything you
不
want.
能插
I'm
嘴
going to。ask a question about race, but if you want to answer about something else, go ahead. But I think that the country would be better served if we allowed both people to speak with fewer interruptions. I'm appealing to you, sir, to do that.
well, and him too.
Well, frankly, you've been doing more
Well,
interrupting than
that's
he
all right,
has.
but he does plenty.
川
Well, less than
主持人在说
you have.
川
Less
普
than
干扰
no,
拜登
less
比
than
较
you have.
多，所以希望他不要
Please continue on.
继续干扰。
The issue of race. Vice President Biden, you say that President Trump's response to the violence in Charlottesville 3 years ago, when he talked
主持人
about
在说
very
拜
fine
登
people on
当
both
时
sides,
川普
was what
说3
directly
年前
led
的
you to launch this run for president.
Oh, yeah, sure.
种族
President
歧视问题。
Trump, you have often said that you believe you have done more for black Americans than any president,
川普
with the
总统你说
possible
你帮
exception
非
of
裔的
Abraham
民众
Lincoln.
做
My
过
question
很
for
多
the
事
two of
情。
you is why should voters trust you rather than your
我的问题
opponent
是，为什么美
to
国
deal
民
with the
众
race
要
issues
相
facing
信
this
你
country over the next
会
4
解决
years?
种族
Vice
歧视的
President
问
Biden,
题
you go first.
It's about equity and equality. It's about decency. It's about
这是关
constitution.
于平等
And。we have never walked away from trying to require equity for everyone, equality for the
我们
whole
从来都没
America.
有
But we've never accomplished it. But we've
没有
never walked
不
away
停
from
的
what
帮
he has done.
和平、
It
平
is true.
等
The
继
reason
续
I
竞
got in the
争。
race is when those people, close your eyes. Remember what those people look like coming out of the fields carrying torches, their veins bulging, spewing, and just spewing
拜登总统现
anti-Semitic
在希望
bile,
民
and
众
accompanied
冥想一
by
下
the
这
Ku Klux
些
Klan.
因
A
为
young
种
woman
族
got
歧
killed.
视
And
去
they
世
asked
的
the
人，他
president
们的
what he
脸
thought. He
长
said there
如
were
何？
very fine people on both sides. No president has ever
Finish
said
the
anything
statement.
like that.
Finish the
It
statement.
is who's
Now,
2
second,
minutes, sir.
second point I'd make to you is that when Floyd was killed, when Mr. Floyd was killed, there was a peaceful protest in front of the White House. What did he do? He came out of his
上一
bunker,
次
had the
非裔小
military
孩去世
do
的时候，
use
因为
tear
警
gas
察
on him so he could walk
误杀
across
之后
to a church and hold
白
up a
宫前
Bible.
面有很
And then
多
what
非常和平的
The bishop of that very church
抗
said
议。
that it was a disgrace. the general who was with him said all he ever wants to do is divide people, not unite people at all.
但是川普就说他一直想要让大家竞争，然后不要和平。
Racist division. This is a man who, in fact, you talk about helping African Americans. 1 in 1,000 African Americans has been killed because of the coronavirus.
每1000人当中就有1位非裔小孩、非裔人因为疫情关系去世。
1 in 500 African Americans. This man is the savior of African Americans. This man cares at all. This man.
拜登在说，川普真的关心吗？他真的是关心非裔民众吗？
You have to look at what he did, and what he did has been disastrous for the African American.
你要看看他之前帮非裔民众做过什么事情，他做过的事情是完全是非常严重，然后非常不和平。
Where you call them super predators, African Americans are super predators, and they've never forgotten it. They've never forgotten.
川普现在在说，拜登1994年说非裔民众是非常危险的人物。
population community, you have treated the black community about as bad as anybody in this country. You did the 19, and that's why if you look at the polls, I'm doing better than any Republican has done in a long time because they saw what you did. You call them super predators, and you've called them worse than that. Because you look back at your testimony over the years, you've called them a lot worse than that. As far as the church is concerned, and as far as the generals are concerned, we just got the support of 250 military leaders and generals. Total support. Law enforcement, almost every law enforcement group in the United States. I have Florida, I have Texas, I have Ohio. I have Portland. The sheriff just came out today and he said, I support President Trump. I don't think you have any law enforcement. You can't even say the word law enforcement because if you say those words, you're going to lose all of your radical left supporters. And why aren't you saying those words, Joe? Why don't you say the words law enforcement? Because you know what? If they called us in Portland, we would put out that fire in a half an hour, but they won't do it because they're run by radical left Democrats. If you look at Chicago, if you look at any place you want to look, Seattle, they heard we were coming in the following day, and they put up their hands, and we got back Seattle. Minneapolis, we got it back, Joe, because we believe in law and order, but you don't. The top 10 cities and just about the top 40 cities are run by Democrats and in many cases radical left, and they've got you wrapped around their finger, Joe, to a point where you don't want to say anything about law and order. And I'll tell you what, the people of this country want and demand law and order, and you're afraid to even say it.
All right. I want to return to the question of race. Vice President Biden, after the grand jury in the Breonna Taylor case decided not to charge any of the police with homicide, you said it raises the question, quote, whether justice could be equally applied in America. Do you believe that there is a separate but unequal system of justice for blacks in this country?
你觉得在法律上，这个国家对非裔民众和平吗？平等吗？
In law enforcement and the way in which it's enforced. But look, the vast majority of police officers are good, decent, honorable men and women.
大部分的警力都是好人。
Every day to take care of us. But there are some bad apples, and when they occur,
但其中当中就有一些比较不好的警察，我们需要把他们搜出来。
As President of the United States is call together an entire group of people at the White House. Well, everything from the civil rights groups to the police officers to the police chiefs, and we're going to work this out. We're going to work this out so we change the way in which we have more transparency and when these things happen. These cops aren't happy to see what happened to George Floyd. These cops aren't happy to see what happened to Breonna Taylor.
警方也不希望看到这些
But we
新
have
闻
to have a system where people are held accountable.
我们必须要有个计划。
Violence in response is never appropriate. Never appropriate. Peaceful protest is. Violence is never appropriate.
What is
peaceful protest? When they run through the middle of the town and burn down
your
stores and kill people all over the place,
President
No,
Trump,
it's not, but you say it is.
President Trump, I'd like to continue with the issue of race. I promise we're going to get to the issue of law and order in a moment. This month, your administration directed federal agencies to end racial sensitivity training that addresses white privilege or critical race theory. Why did you decide to do that, to
关于
end
种
racial
族议
sensitivity
题
training?
的
And do
训
you
练。
believe that there is systemic racism in this country, sir?
你认为这个国家有
I ended it because a lot
种
of
族歧视
people
的
were
问题吗？
complaining that they were asked to do things that were absolutely insane, that it was a radical
关于这
revolution
些
that
种
was
族
taking
议
place
题
in
上
our
的训练
military,
呢？
in our
这些
schools,
训练的内容
all
非
over
常
the
的
place, and you know it,
自
and
由
so
派，
does
非常
everybody
的有
else.
问
Radical,
题。
And he would know.
what is
Oh, it was
radical
totally
about
racist.
racial sensitivity training, sir?
If you were a certain person, you had no status in life. It was sort of a reversal. And if you look at the people, we were paying people hundreds of thousands of dollars to teach very bad ideas and frankly very
我们
sick ideas.
花了很多钱
and really, they were
教导大
teaching
家
people to hate our country. And I'm not going to do that. I'm not
恨
going to
我
allow
们
that
自
to
己的
happen.
国家。
We have to
我
go
不会让
back
这件
to
事
the
情再
core
继续发
values of
生。
this country. They were teaching people that our country is a horrible place, it's a
他们在
racist
教
place, and they were
人
teaching
民
people to
我
hate
们
our
国
country.
家是一个
And
种
I'm
族
not
歧
going to
视的
allow
国
that to
家，
happen.
Vice President Biden?
所以我才
Nobody's
取消
doing
这
that.
些
He's
训练。
He's
Oh,
the
you
racist.
just don't.
Here's the deal. I know a lot more about
You
this.
don't
than he
know.
does.
Let him finish.
The fact is that there is racial insensitivity. People have to be made
拜登
aware
在说，这
of
国家
what other
确实
people
是
feel
有
like,
种族歧视的问题，
what
然后有很
insults
多
them,
人
what
其实
is
不
demeaning
自
to
觉
them.。It's important to people know they don't want to. Many people don't want to hurt other people's feelings, but it
很多
makes a
民
big
众都不
difference.
希望
It
伤到
makes a
其他人
gigantic
的心。
difference in the way a child is able to grow up and have a sense of self-esteem. It's a little bit like how this guy and his friends look down on so many people. They look down their nose on people like Irish Catholics like me and grew up in Scranton. They look down on people who don't
像
have
是一
money.
些
They look down on people who are
特别
of
的
a different faith. They look
宗
down
教
on
呢
people
会
who are a different
看
color.
会贬
In
低，会
fact,
看
we're
低其
all
他种
Americans.
族
The。only way we're going to bring this country together is bring everybody together. There's nothing we
唯一
cannot
可以让
do
这个
if we do it
国家
together.
团结的话，
We
就
can
是要
take
把
this
所有人
on
集
and we
结
can
在一起
defeat
来讨论这
racism.
件事情。
President Trump, sir.
During the Obama-Biden administration, there was tremendous division. There was hatred. You look
在
at
奥巴马执政的时期的
Ferguson,
时
you
候，
look
有
at
非常
you
多
go
的
to
种族
many
歧视，
places.
有
Look
非
at
常多的
Oakland. Look what
种族
happened in
分
Oakland.
裂
Look。what happened in Baltimore. Look what happened. Frankly, it was more violent than what I'm even seeing now.
Oh, my
but the
Lord.
reason
当时比
is
现在
that
还
the
暴力。
Democrats that run these
Absolutely
cities
ridiculous.
don't want to talk like you about law and order.
Violent
and you still
crime.
haven't mentioned.
Violent
Are you in
crime.
像是
favor
所有
of
的
law
民
and
主党
order?
都像你一样，不想要谈到警力
Are
这
you
方
in
面的
favor
问
of
题。
law and order? Go ahead,
Yes, I'm
say
a
it.
favor.
You asked a
Everybody's in favor
question,
of
let him finish.
law and
You'll
order.
lose his
Law
left.
and
Let
order.
him, let him answer.
Law and order with justice, where people get treated fairly. And the fact of the matter is, violent crime went down 17%, 15%.
在
in
奥
our
巴马时期
administration.
的时
It's
候，
gone up on his watch.
暴力倾向已经降低了
All right, we're
17%。
now,
He is president of
Mr.
the
President,
United
you're going
States of
to...
America.
Mr.
像是在
President,
川普的执政
Mr.
下，
President,
暴
you're
力
going to
越
be
来
very
越
happy
严
because
重
we're。now going to talk about law and order.
Places we had trouble were Democratic-run cities.
That's
and
exactly my question.
Democratic-
There has been a dramatic increase in homicides in America
Trump-
this summer, particularly, and you often blame
主
that
持
on
人现在在
Democratic
说，
mayors and
没
Democratic
错，就
governors,
是
but in
在
fact
民
there
主
have
党
been equivalent
当选的那些州里面
in Republican-led
暴力
cities
倾向
like
其实是
Tulsa
非
and
常多
Fort
的。
Worth. So the question is this really a party issue?
问题是，这
I
真
think
的
it's
是
a party
党内
issue.
的
You
问
can
题
bring
吗？
in a
是
couple
执
of
政党的问
examples,
题
but
吗
if？you look at Chicago, what's going on in Chicago, where 53 people were shot and 8 died. Shot. If you look at New York, where it's going up like
你看看
nobody's
纽
ever
约
seen anything, the numbers are
这个
going up
暴
100,
力倾向、暴力
150, 200%.
倾向，然后
Crime,
暴力数目
it
越来
is
越多。
crazy what's going on, and he doesn't want to say law and order because he can't, because he'll
拜登
lose
不
his
想要
radical left
谈论
supporters.
这个
And
问题，
once
是
he
因为
does
他
that,
不
it's
想
over
要
with.
支
But
持
if he ever got to run this country, and they ran it the way he
左派
would
的
want to
人
run
士
it, we would have
We would
our
run it
suburbs
the
would
way-
be gone. By the way,
Suburbs.
our suburbs would be gone, and you would see problems like you've
He
never
wouldn't
seen.
know a
Right.
suburb unless he took a wrong turn.
Oh, I know suburbs
He would not.
so much
I was
better.
raised.
拜登在
No,
说，
wait a minute.
川普不知道乡下是
This
长
is
怎
not
样的，除非他开
1950. All
错。
these dog whistles on racism don't work anymore. Suburbs are by and large integrated. There's many people today driving their kids to soccer practice and or
乡下有很多民众
black
就
and
每
white
天都
and
很
Hispanic
平
in
安
the
啊，
same
然后
car
很
as there have
每
been
天都
any time
去
in
上
the
学，
past.
然后去
What
踢
really
足
is a
球。
threat to the suburbs and their safety
真正
is his
对
failure to deal with COVID. They're dying in the suburbs.
真正
His
对
failure
乡下
to
民
deal
众
with the
造成威胁的
environment.
就
They're
是疫
being
情。
flooded. They're being burned out because his refusal to do anything. That's why the suburbs are in trouble.
I do want to talk about this
乡
issue
下
of
会有
law
问
and
题，
order,
就是因为
though,
川普
and
不
in the
愿意
joint
去面对这些问
recommendation
题。
that came from the Biden-Bernie Sanders task force, you talked about, quote, reimagining policing. First of all, what does reimagining policing mean, and do you support?
主持人现在在
If I might finish the
说，
question,
他
what does
希望
reimagining policing mean,
拜登
and do
解释
you
一下
support the Black Lives Matter
reimagining policing 就是重新想
call
象
for
警力是什
for
么事情。
community control of policing?
Look, what I support is the police having the opportunity to deal with the problems they face. And I'm
我相
not
信是
totally
警力
opposed to
有能
defunding
力
the police
去解
officers.
决他们自
As a
己
matter of
面对
fact,
的问
police,
题。
local police. The only one defunding in his budget calls for a $400 million cut in local law enforcement assistance. They need more assistance. They need, when they show up for a 9/11
川
call,
普
to have
的
someone
政
with
策
them as a
就是会
psychologist or
减少400万
psychiatrist to keep
美
them
金
from
的
having to
警力
use
训
force
练、
and be
警
able
力
to
支
talk
持。
people down. We have to have community policing like we had before, where the officers get to know the people
我
in
们
the
需要社区
community.
警力
That's when，
因为
crime
这些
went
社区警
down.
力
It
才会
didn't go up,
认
it
识
went down.
那个乡
And so
下
we
的
have to
所有的
be
民
That's
众
not what they're talking
所有
about.
的
Chris.
情
That's
况。
not what they're talking about. He's
That's
talking about
exactly-
defunding the police.
That is not true.
He doesn't have any law
Would you-
support.
look,
He has no law enforcement
That's not
support.
true.
Almost
That's
nothing.
not. That, look,
Oh, really? Who do you
川普
have?
在
Name
说
one
拜登
group
完
that
全没有
supports
警
you.
方
Name
的
one
支
group
持
that。came out and supported you. Go
Look,
ahead.
look.
Think. We have
现在
time.
在
we
问
don't
拜
have
登
time to
有
do
谁
anything.
支持
All
你
right.？
All right,
Name
folks,
one law
folks.
enforcement group that came out and
I think,
supported
gentlemen,
you.
I think I'm going
你可以点名
to
出来，有哪
take back the
一个警力
moderation
支持你
and
吗？
I want to get to another subject, which is the issue of protests in many cities that have turned
现在
violent. In
主持人
Portland,
要换到
Oregon,
下一题是
especially,
关
we had
于
more than 100
美国
straight
各州的
days
抗议。
of protests, which I think you would agree. You talk about peaceful protests. Many of those turned
We're not
into
peaceful.
riots. Mr.
像是
Vice
很多和平
President,
抗议，最后都
you
变
say
成
that
暴
people
力
who
抗
commit
议。
crimes should be held accountable. The question I have, though, is as the Democratic nominee, and earlier tonight you said that you are the Democratic Party
以
right
民
now.
主党候选人，
Have you
你
ever
觉
called the
得
Democratic mayor of Portland or the Democratic governor of Oregon and said, hey, you got to stop this, bring in the National Guard, do whatever it takes, but you stop the
你
days
觉得
and
这些
months of
暴力
violence in
抗
Portland?
议的话，需要
I don't
政
hold
制止
public
吗？
office now. I am a former vice president. I've made it clear. I've made it clear in my public statements that the violence should be prosecuted. It should be prosecuted.
我已经
And
非
anyone
常
who
明确的
commits it
表
should
示
be
，never
prosecuted.
这
called
些
for the
抗
people.
议、这些暴力抗议
Excuse me,
需要
sir.
制止。
You have never called for the leaders in Portland and in Oregon to call
Because
bring in
they-
the National Guard and knock off 100 days of riots.
They can, in fact, take care of it if he just stay out of the way.
Oh,
Look here.
oh, really?
Here,
Oh, really?
here's the
But
thing.
No,
I
that-
sent
so
in
that-
the
that's
U.S.
what-
I asked him a
Marshals to
question.
get the
有
killer
2
of
周
the young man
的
in the
抗
middle of
议
the
啊
street. They，
那
shot
时候
him. And
拜
for
登没有
3
让
days,
President Trump-
Portland
国
wouldn't
家
do
警力
anything.
进来
I
帮
interrupted
助。
the U.S. Marshals.
President
They
Trump-
took care of business.
Go ahead, sir.
And by the way, you know, his own former spokesperson said, you know, riots and chaos and violence help his cause. That's what this is all
I
about.
don't know who said that.
I do.
拜登在说，川普的前内阁
Kellyanne Conway.
表
I don't
示
think she said that.
She said that.
暴力
So
啊
here's the-
抗议
Well,
其
here's
实
the
是
point.
在帮
The
川普
point is
的。
that that's what he is keeps trying to rile everything up. He doesn't want to calm things down.
他不想
Instead
要
of going in
任何
and
事情
talking
和
to
平
people
下
and
来
saying,，
他不
let's get
想
everybody
要
together,
沟通，
figure
不
out
想
how
要
to
大
deal
家
with
沟
this.
通。
What's he do? He just pours gasoline in the fire.
他只是在火上
Constantly,
加
at
油。
every single solitary
Okay,
time.
and to end this, button up this segment, I'm going to give you a minute to answer, sir. You have repeatedly
Well, wait, I
criticized.
have to answer his
No,
statement.
you have
His statement.
repeatedly.
Wait,
you have
just one
no.
second.
You've been talking
He
主
back
持
made
人
and
一
forth.
现在
I'm
又想要
asking you
制
to
止
no,
川
you
普
know, sir,
回答
I。would love to end it, and
you
we
know, if
would
you want to
very-
switch seats,
We would very quickly.
We could do that, but
I'd
I'm
send
no,
in the
I'm,
National Guard. It would be over. There'd be no problem.
Okay,
But they
good.
don't want to accept the National Guard.
You have repeatedly criticized the vice president for not specifically calling out Antifa and
主
other
持人在说
left-wing， extremist
川普总
groups.
统
But are you willing
经常
tonight
在
to condemn white supremacists and militia groups
表示
and
拜登做
to
得不
say
好。
that they need to stand down and not add to the violence in a number of these cities, as we saw in Kenosha and as we've seen in Portland?
Sure,
Are you
I'm willing
prepared
to
to
do that,
specifically
but
Do it.
Well,
I
go
would
ahead,
say
sir.
I would say almost everything I see is from the left wing, not from the
我
right
所有
wing.
看到的
what
暴
do
力
you-
倾
what
向，
are you
所有的
saying?
抗力都是从左派来的，不是右派
Then
的。
do it, sir.
Say it. Do it. Say it.
Do you want to call him? What do you want to call him? Give me a name. Give me a
White
name. Go ahead.
supremacists
Who
and
would
white
you like me to
supremacists.
condemn?
White
Proud boys.
supremacists
你希望
and
我
white
怪
supremacists.
罪谁？
Stand back and stand by. But I'll tell you what. somebody's got to do something about Antifa and the left, because this is not a right-wing problem. This is a left-wing.
有人需要解决左派的问题，这个不是右派的问题。
Antifa's an idea, not an organization.
You got it.
Not militia. That's what his
拜登在说，这个是个
FBI director
idea， 不是
No, we're done, sir. We're moving on to the next.
不是一个组织。
That's not an idea.
Everybody in
Antifa
your
is
administration tells you the truth has a bad idea.
Can I tell you what?
You have no ideas.
Antifa is a dangerous,
All right,
radical
gentlemen, we're
group.
now moving on to the Trump and Biden
川普
records.
在说，这 Antifa 是一
When
个
a president,
很
I'm going to ask a
有
question.
问题的组
When
织
the。president seeks a second term, it is generally a referendum on his record. But Vice President Biden, you like to quote one of your dad's sayings, which is, don't compare me to the almighty, compare me to the alternative. And in this case, sir, you are the alternative. Looking
拜登，
at both of your
你常
records,
常
I'm going to ask
形
each of
容
you,
一句话，就是
why
你爸
should
常讲的
voters
话。
elect you president over your opponent? In this segment, President Trump, you go first, 2 minutes.
Because there has never been an administration or president who has done more than I've done in
从
a
来没有
period
任
of
何一
3.5
个
years.
政
And
权
that's
比
despite
我做
the
的更
impeachment
多。拜登
hoax.
在
And you saw
川
what
普在
happened
说
today
他
with
做
Hillary
的非常
Clinton,
的
where it
好。
was a whole big con job. But despite going through all of these things, where I had to fight both flanks and behind me and above, there has never been an administration that's done what I've done. The greatest
从来没有
before
任
COVID
何一
came
个
in, the
政权
greatest
做
economy
得
in
比我
history,
更
lowest
好。
unemployment numbers. Everything
失业
was
率
good.
最低。
Everything was going. And by the way, there was unity going to happen. People were calling me for the first time in years. They were calling, and they were saying, it's time maybe. And then what happened? We got hit, but now we're building it back up again. A rebuilding of the military, including Space Force and all of the other things. A fixing of the VA, which was a mess under him. 308,000 people died because they didn't have
现在川
proper
普
health
在
care. He
说，
was
拜
a
登当
mess.
时当
And
副
we
总
now
统的
got a
时候，
91%
对于军
approval
队的
rating at the VA.
健保
Our
非
vets, we
常
take
做
care of
的
our
做得
vets.
非常的
But
不
we've
好。
rebuilt our military. The job that we've done, and I'll tell you something, some people say maybe the most important. By the end of the first term, I'll have approximately 300 federal judges and Court of Appeals judges, 300, and hopefully 3 great Supreme Court justices. That is a record the likes of which very few people, and you know one of the reasons I have so many judges, because President Obama and him left me 128
其他总统都没有做到的事
to
情。
fill. When you leave office, you don't leave any judges. That's like you just don't do that. They left 128 open member of his.
像是拜登
Because
他
they have
上
a
一
little
任的
different
时候，
philosophy. I'd say
结束
if
之
you
后
left
就很多
us
法官空缺。
128 openings, you can't be a good president. You can't be a good vice president. But I want to thank you because it gives us almost. It'll probably be above that number by
你
the
没办法
end
当
of
一个
this
好的
term.
总统，但是我要谢谢
300
你，
judges. It's a record.
让我
Looking
达
at
到
both your records,
这个好的
why should
记录。
voters elect you president as opposed to President Trump? You have 2 minutes uninterrupted.
Under this president, we become weaker, sicker, poorer.
拜登在说，在川普的政权下，我们变得更弱、更微弱。
We inherited a recession. I was asked to fix it. I did. We left him a
我们经
booming
济
economy,
也
and
受
he
到重
caused the
挫。
recession. With regard to being weaker,
这个重挫
the
就
fact
是
is
川
that
普造
I've
成的。
gone head to head with Putin and made it clear to him we're not going to take any of his stuff. He's Putin's puppy. He still refuses to even say anything to Putin about the
拜登
bounty
在
on the heads of
说，
American
川普
soldiers.
是
No,
俄罗斯总拜登的讲
He
话。
never keeps his word.
No, I'm not asking. That was a rhetorical question.
Can you
Go
add
ahead,
back
sir.
30 seconds?
Yeah, yes,
Okay.
you may have.
All right.
Go ahead.
So, thirdly, we're poor. The billionaires have gotten much more
第三
wealthy
点，
by a
有
tune
钱
of
人
over
越来越有
$300 to
钱，
$400 billion
但是美国民
more
众
just
越来
since
越
COVID.
没有钱。
You in the home, you got less. You're in more trouble than you were before. In terms of
美
being
国民众现
more
在的情
violent,
况比以前
when we
还
were in
糟
office,
糕
there were 50 America than there is today. He's president of the United States.
我是副
It's
总统
on
的
his
时候，比
watch. And
现
with
在
regard to
的
more divided, the nation can't stay divided. We can't be this way. And speaking of my son, the way you talk about the military, the way you talk about them being losers and being and
川普
just
总统，
being
你在
suckers.
说
My son
军队的时候，
was in
你把
Iraq.
他们讲的那么
He spent a
贬低
year
他们的
there.
地位，
He got,
然后你
he
现在
got the
在讲
Bronze
我的儿
Star.
子
He got the Conspicuous Service Medal. He was not a loser. He
我儿
was
子
a
不是个输
patriot,
者。
and the people left behind there were heroes.
Really?
And I
Are you
resent
talking
like
about
hell.
Hunter? Are you talking about
I'm
Hunter?
talking about my son, Bo Biden. You're
I
talking
don't know.
about Beto.
I don't know Bo. I know Hunter.
Yeah, you
Hunter
know Bo.
Hunter got thrown out of the military.
现在
He was
川普
thrown
又
out,
在
dishonorably
说
discharged.
That's not true. He
for
wasn't
拜登的
cocaine
儿子的
use.
丑闻。
And he didn't have a job until you became vice president. And once you
None of
became
that
vice
is
president,
true.
he made a fortune in Ukraine, in China, in Moscow,
That is simply
and
他们
various
现在
other
又回到
places. He made
拜登的儿
some
子
fortunes.
My
在
son,
乌克兰收
my
了
son,
这
like a lot of people,
350万美
like a lot of people
金
you。know at home, had a drug problem. He's overtaken it. He's fixed it. He's worked on it, and I'm proud of him.
But why
I'm
was he
proud of
given
my
tens
son.
of millions
All
of
right.
But he
dollars?
wasn't given
All right.
tens of millions of dollars.
拜登
Totally
在说
discredited.
我非常以我儿子为荣
Totally，
他戒酒
discredited.
戒毒，
Totally
然后还找
discredited.
工作。
We've already been through this. I think the American people would rather hear about more substantial
So do I.
subjects. Well, you know, as the moderator, sir, I'm going to make
主持人
a
现在
judgment
在
call
说
here.
3.5
我觉得
million
美国民众
dollars
想要听到更有
from
意义、
Moscow.
更有内容
That
的。
report is totally
Why did he get
discredited.
it?
I
Mitt
think,
Romney on that committee said it wasn't worth taxpayers'
John-
money, that report. It was written for political reasons.
you know, I'd like to talk about climate change.
So would I.
Okay. The
主
forest
持人说
fires in
现
the
在
West
想要
are
换到下一
raging
题是
now.
在
They
讲
have burned
地球暖
millions of
化。
acres. They have displaced hundreds of thousands of people. When state officials there blame the fires on climate change, Mr. President, you said, I don't think the science knows. Over your 4 years, you
川普
have
总统在
pulled
过
the
去
U.S.
4
out of
年
the
当
Paris
中，
Climate
你都说
Accord. You have rolled back a number of Obama
地球暖化
environmental
是个
records.
谎言。
What do you believe about the science of climate change, and what will you do in
地
the
球
next
暖
4
化的
years
科
to
学，
confront it?
你到
I
底
want
相信什么？
crystal clean water and air. I want beautiful, clean air. We have now the lowest carbon. If you look at our numbers right now, we
我想要
are
美国
doing
有
phenomenally.
干
But
净
I
的
haven't
水
destroyed our
干净的空
businesses.
气
Our businesses aren't put out of commission. If you look at the Paris Accord, it was a disaster from our standpoint. And people are actually very happy about what's going on because our businesses are doing well. As far as the fires are concerned, you need forest management in addition to everything else.
我们
The
境内
forest
的
floors are
产业
loaded
做
up
得
with
非常好
trees,，
但
dead
是像是
trees
加
that
州
are
的
years
这个
old
野
and they're
火
like，tinder
你需
and
要
leaves
有
and everything
团
else.
队
You
去
drop a
控
cigarette
制。
in there, the whole forest burns down. You've got to have forest
What
management.
do you
You've got to have
believe?
cuts.
What do you believe about the science of climate change, sir?
I
你相
believe
信
that we have to
地球
do
暖化的
everything
科
we
学
can to
吗？
have immaculate air, immaculate water, and do whatever else we can that's good. You know, we're planting 1 billion trees, the Billion Tree Project, and it's very
Do you
exciting for a
believe
lot of
that,
people.
我们现在
human
正在做计
pollution,
划，
gas,
种
greenhouse
很
gas
多棵
emissions
树。
contributes to the global warming of
I
this
think a lot
planet?
of things do, but I think to an extent, yes. I think to an extent, yes. But I also think we have to do better management of our forests. Every year, I get the call.
我觉得我们
California's
现在
burning.
需要做的事
California's
情
burning.
就是要
If
管
that
理
was
好我们的
clean,
树林
if you had forest management, good forest management, you wouldn't be getting those
如果有
calls.
好
You know,
的
in
管
Europe,
理
they
的话，
live
就
their
不会有
forest
这些
cities.
野
They're
火
called
发
forest
生。
cities. They maintain their forests. They manage their forests. I was with the head of a major country. It's a forest city. He said, "Sir, we have trees that are far more, they ignite much easier
我才刚
than
刚跟一
California.
个有
There
很多
shouldn't
树
be
林的
that
国
problem.
家
I
的
spoke with
总
the
统
governor
见
about it.
面
I'm，getting along very well with the governor. But I said, you know, at some point, you can't every year have hundreds of thousands of acres of land just burned to the ground.
But, sir,
That's burning down because of a lack of
But, sir,
management.
if you believe in the science
加
of
州的野火
climate
就是因为
change,
没有好的
why
管
have
理
you。rolled back the Obama Clean Power Plan, which limited carbon emissions in power plants? Why have you
主持人在
relaxed
问
Because it was
川普总统
driving
为什么
energy
你
prices through the
取
sky.
消
Why have you
了当
relaxed
时奥
fuel
巴马的一
economy
些
standards
地球暖
that
化的
are
政
going to
策？
create more pollution from cars
Well,
and
not
trucks?
really, because what's happening is the car is much less expensive and it's a much safer car, and you're talking about a tiny difference. And then what would happen, because of the cost of the car, you would have at least double and triple the number of cars purchased. We have the old slugs out there that are 10, 12 years old. If you did that, the car would be safer. It would be much cheaper by
But in the case of
$3,500.
California, they've simply
no, but you
ignored
would take
your
a lot of cars
rollback.
off the market because people would be able to afford a car. Now,
他们现在在讨论
and
车
by
子
the way,
的
we're
价
going to see how
钱。
that turns out. But a lot of people agree with me. Many people. The car has gotten so expensive because they have computers all
现
over
在
the
的
place
车就
for an
越
extra
价钱
little
越
bit
来越贵。
of gasoline. And, by
That's
the,
not-
and I'm okay with electric cars too. I think I'm all for electric cars. I've given
我
big
非常支持
incentives for
电动
electric
车。
cars. But what they've done in California is just
All right.
crazy.
Vice President Biden, I'd like you to respond to the president's climate change record, but I also want to ask you about a concern. You propose $2 trillion in green jobs. You talk about new limits, not abolishing, but new limits on fracking, ending the use of fossil fuels to generate electricity by 2035, and zero net emission of greenhouse gases by 2050. The president says a lot of these things would tank the economy and cost millions of jobs.
He's absolutely wrong.
你觉得这样子会 让很多工作
if
失
in
去
fact,
吗？
during our administration, the Recovery Act, I was in charge, able to bring down the cost of renewable energy to cheaper than or as cheap
在我
as
是当副
coal
总统的
and
时候，
gas
我让
and
很
oil.
多
Nobody's going to build another
干净能源的成本
coal-fired
降
plant
低。
in America. No one's going to build another oil-fired plant in America. They're going to move to renewable energy, number one. Number two, we're going to make sure that we are able to take the federal fleet and turn it into a fleet that's run on their electric vehicles.
第
Making
二
sure
点，
we
我
can do
需
that.
要
We're going to
我
put
希望美国所有
500,000
的
charging
军队
stations and
的所
all
有
the
的
highways that we're going to be building in the future. We're going to build
交通工具
an
都变成
economy
电
that
动
in
的。
fact is going to provide for the ability us to take 4 million buildings and make sure that they in fact are weatherized in a way that in fact they'll emit significantly less
我们
gas
要
and
建造
oil because
很
the heat will
多
not be going out.
的大
There's
楼
so
都
many
是
things that we
绿
can
能
do
能源
now
的。
to create thousands and thousands of jobs. We can get to net zero in terms of energy production by 2035. Not only not
到
costing people
2035年前，
jobs,
我们可以
creating
降低
jobs,
排放量到
creating
几乎
millions
等
of
于
good
零。
paying jobs, not $15 an hour, but prevailing wage. By having a new infrastructure that in fact is green. And the first thing I will do, I will rejoin
如果我
the
们
Paris
建造了
Accord.
这些绿
I
能
will
源的
join the
建筑，
Paris
我可以
Accord
提
because
供
with us
更
out
多
of
的
it,
工
look
作
what's happening. It's
而且
all
不，
falling
而且
apart.
时薪
And
是
talk
在
about someone who has
符合
no
法规的
relationship
范围。
with foreign policy. Brazil, the rainforests of Brazil are being torn down, are being ripped down. More carbon is absorbed in that rainforest than every bit of carbon that's emitted in the United States. Instead of doing something about that, I would be gathering up and making sure we had the countries of the world coming up with $20 billion and say, here's $20 billion. Stop
我会集结很多
tearing
所有
down
国家
the
的
forest.
团
And if you
队，
don't, then you're
然后
going to
给一
have
笔资金，
significant
资金
economic consequences.
What about,
来
what
解
about the
决
argument that
野火的问
President
题。
Trump basically says that you have to balance environmental interests and economic interests, and he's drawn his line.
Well, he hadn't drawn a line. He still, for example, makes sure that he wants to make sure that methane's not a problem. We can,
拜登在
you
说
can now
川
emit
普
more
还是
methane without it
他
being
没
a
有
problem. Methane. This
把
is a guy who
地球
says
暖化
that you
跟
don't have to have mileage standards
经
for
济
automobiles
两
that
个有
exist
平衡。
now. This is the guy who says that, well, the fact that it's all true. And here's
He's
the deal.
talking about the Green New Deal, and it's not $2 billion or $20 billion, as you said. It's $100 trillion.
I'm talking about
where they want to rip
Biden
down
plan.
buildings
川普现在在说
and rebuild the buildings.
拜登
It's the
的
dumbest,
这个绿
most
建筑的方案
ridiculous,
会
where
造成
airplanes are out of business,
上百
where
兆美
two-car
金
systems are
的
out,
资金，
where they want to
需
take
要
out
上
the
百兆美
cows.
资金去
You
建
know,
造
that's。not true either, right?
Not
This is a 100
Simply,
trillion.
look,
That's more money than our
that is-
country could make in
that is
100
simply
years if we're going
not
by.
the case.
All right,
这笔
let
资
me-
金
let me-
是
let me-
美国
because I
要花
actually- wait a
100
minute,
年
sir.
才
I
可以
actually
赚出来
have
的钱。
studied your plan, and it includes upgrading 4 million buildings, weatherizing 2 million homes over 4 years, building 1.5 million energy-efficient homes. So the question becomes, the president is saying, I think some people who support the president would say that sounds like it's going to cost a lot of money and hurt the economy.
主持人在说，川普想要建造的这些绿能源家
But
庭
let
啊
him，finish, sir.
会需要很大笔的资金。
The fact is, it's going to create millions of good-paying jobs, and these tax incentives for people to weatherize, which he wants to get rid of. It's going to make the
拜
economy
登
much
在
safer. Look how
说，
much we're
这些
paying
绿
now
能源的家
to deal
庭
with the hurricanes.
可以
to deal with, by the way,
制
he
造
has an
出
answer
很
for
多工
hurricanes.
作，
He
但是
said,
川普
maybe we
想要
should
取
drop
消
the
这些
nuclear
绿
weapon
能源
on
的
them.
家
I
庭
mean,。
I never said that at
That's,
all.
he did say
You
that.
made it up.
川普在说，我从来没说过这件事
And here's the
情。
deal. We are going to be in a position where we can create hard, good jobs by making sure the environment is clean and we all
拜
are
登
in
在说，
better
如果我
shape.
们
We
建造了
spend
干净
billions
能
of
源
dollars now,
绿能源，
billions
我们
of
可以
dollars
创造出
on floods,
很多的
hurricanes,
工作机
rising
会。
seas. We're in real trouble. Look what's happened just in the Midwest with these storms that come through and wipe out entire sections and counties in Iowa. That didn't happen before.
你看看现在的天灾，有多少天灾造成多少人受困，这些以前都没有发生过。
The rest of the world, we've got to get them to come along. That's why we have to get back into the Paris Accord.
这就是为什么我们需要重回巴黎协议。
Vice President, why didn't you get the world? China sends up real dirt into the air. Russia does, India does, they all do.
川普现在在说，中国大陆、俄罗斯、印度都排放的碳排放量很多啊，为什么都没人在讨论他们呢？
He made a statement about the military. He said I said something about the military. He and his friends made it up, and then they went with it. I never said it.
Okay.
What he did is he
You're done in
said
this segment.
he called the military
Mr. Vice President,
stupid bastards.
I
And he
did
said
not
it on
say
tape. He said stupid bastards. He said it.
Stop.
I would never say that to the military.
Play it.
川普在说，拜登之前给军队标签坏的标签，我从来都不会给军队有坏的标签。
I can't remember which of all his rantings.
I'm having a little trouble myself, but and about the economy and about this question of what it's going to cost.
The economy.
I mean, the Green New Deal and the idea of what your environmental changes will do.
The Green New Deal will pay for itself as we move forward. We're not going to build plants that, in fact,
拜登在说，我的绿能源 需要的资金
Green New
其实是他可以，
You support
因为是绿能源，所以就不需要那么多资金。然
Oh,
后
well, that's a big statement.
I
That
support
means you
the
just lost the radical left.
I support
川普在
the
说
Biden
这件事情是一
that
个
I
非
put
常
forward.
左派
The
的事情。
Biden plan, which is different than what he calls the radical Green New Deal.
All right, gentlemen, final segment.
现在
Election
要进到
integrity.
最
As
后
we
一
meet
段了。
tonight, millions of Americans are receiving mail-in ballots or going to
是
vote
关于
early.
选举的完整性。
How confident should we be that this will be a fair election? And what are you prepared to do over the next 5+ weeks? Because it'll
邮
not
寄
only
选
be
票，
election
我们
day,
真
but
的应该相
also
信这个系
counting
统
some
吗？
ballots, mail-in ballots after election day. What are you prepared to do to reassure the American people that the next president will be the
主持人现在在问
legitimate winner of this election? In this final segment,
你
Mr.
会
Vice
为了
President,
这个
you go
邮
first.
寄票
Prepared to let
选票
people vote.
准备
They
些
should
什
go
么
to
事情？
iwillvote.com, decide how they're going to vote, when they're going to vote, and what means by which they're going to vote. His own Homeland Security Director, and as well as the FBI Director, says there is no evidence at all that mail-in
拜登
ballots
在
are
说
a，source
川普
of
自己的
being
FBI
manipulated and
还有
cheating.
自己的内
They
阁
said
都
that.
说，
The fact is that there are going to be millions of
邮
people
路
because
票
of COVID
选票
that
其
are
实
going to
不
be
会有任何
voting by
人为
mail-in
上的
ballots, like he
问
does,
题
by。the way. He sits behind the Resolute desk and sends his ballot to Florida, number one. Number two, we're going to make sure that those people who want to vote in person are able to vote because enough poll watchers are there to make sure they can socially distance. The polls
第
are
二点
open on time,
我们会
and
确
the
保
polls stay open until the
需要
votes
去
are counted.
当
And
场
this
现
is all
场投
about
票的
trying to
人可以
dissuade
当场
people
现
from
投票
voting。because he's trying to scare people into thinking that it's not going to be legitimate. Show up and vote. You will determine the outcome
拜
of
登
this
现在在呼吁
election.
美国民众
Vote,
要
vote.
出
If you're
来
able
投
to
票
vote。early in your state, vote early. If you're able to vote in person, vote in person. Vote whatever way is
可
the
以现
best
场投
way
票
for
就
you.
现场投票。
Because you will, he cannot stop you from being able to determine the outcome of this election.
川普
And in
没办
terms
法
of whether
阻
or
止
not
你
when the votes are counted and they're all counted, that will be accepted. If I win, that will be accepted. If I lose, that'll be
我会
accepted.
接受
But by the way, if in
选举
fact he
的
says
结果。
he's not sure what he's going to accept, well, let me tell you something. It doesn't matter because if we get the votes, it's going to be all over. He's going to go. He can't stay in power. It won't happen. It won't happen. So vote. Just make sure you understand
拜登持续
you
在
have
呼
it
吁
in your
美国
control
民
to
众
determine
出门去
what
投
this
票。
country is going to look like the next 4 years. Is it going to change or are you going to get 4 more years of these lies?
Mr. President, 2 minutes.
So when I listened to Joe talking about a transition, there's been no transition from when I won. I won that election. And if you look at
川普
crooked
在
Hillary
说
Clinton, if you look at all of the different
政权
people,
转移
there was no
我
transition
不用面
because
对
they came
政
after
权
me
转移
trying
啊
to do a coup. They came after me spying on my campaign. They started from the day I won and even before I won. From the day I came down the escalator with our First Lady, they were a disaster. They were a disgrace to our country. And we've caught them. We've caught them all. We've got it all on tape. We've caught them all. And by the way, you gave the idea for the Logan Act against General Flynn. You better take a look at that because we caught you in a sense. And President Obama was sitting in the office. He knew about it too. So don't tell me about a free transition. As far as the ballots are concerned,
政权转移的问题，因为在我当上总统之前，你们就已经开始在想要推翻我了。
You're soliciting. You're asking. They send it back. You send it back. I did that. If you have an unsolicited, they're sending millions of ballots all over the country. There's fraud. They found them in creeks. They found some with the name Trump. Just happened to have the name Trump just the other day in a waste paper basket. They're being sent all over the place. They sent 2 in a Democrat area. They sent out 1,000 ballots. Everybody got 2 ballots. This is going to be a fraud like you've never seen. The other thing, it's nice on November 3rd, you're watching and you see who won the election. And I think we're going to do well because people are really happy with the job we've done. But you know what? We might not know for months because these ballots are going to be all over. Take a look at what happened in Manhattan. Take a look at what happened in New Jersey. Take a look at what happened in Virginia and other places. They're not losing 2%, 1%, which, by the way, is too much. An election could be won or lost with that. They're losing 30 and 40%. It's a fraud, and it's a shame. And can you imagine where they say you have to have your ballot in by November 10th? November 10th. That means that's 7 days after the election, in theory, should have been announced.
Okay.
We have major states with that, all run by Democrats.
2 minutes is 2 minutes.
All run by Democrats. It's
President Trump.
It's a rigged election.
You're going to be able to continue. You have been charging for months that mail-in balloting is going to be a disaster. You say it's rigged.
主持人在说，川普总统你已经花了好几个月在说这个邮寄选票很有问题。
People voted mail-in voting. That was a quarter, more than a quarter of all the voters that year cast their ballots by mail. Now that millions of mail-in ballots have gone out, what are you going to do about it? And are you counting on the Supreme Court, including a Justice Barrett, to settle any dispute?
Yeah, I think I'm counting on them to look at the ballots, definitely. I hope we don't need them
主持人在问川普总统，你会希望到最后大法官可以决定这个邮入选票是否有问题吗？
of the ballots for 2016 were invalidated. They take them. We don't like them. We don't like them.
川普现在在说，2016年当时的选票有很多有出问题的。
You do a solicited ballot, and that's okay. Or you go and vote.
I'm asking you about the fact that millions of people.
You go and vote. You go and vote like they used to in the old.
Millions of people.
You either do, Chris, a solicited ballot where you're sending it in, they're sending it back, and you're sending. They have mailmen with lots of it. Did you see what's going on? Take a look at West Virginia mailmen selling the ballots. They're being sold. They're being dumped in rivers. This is a horrible thing for our country. This is not going to end well.
Okay.
This is not
这不会是一个好的结局。
5 states have had mail-in ballots for the last decade or more. 5, including 2 Republican states. And you don't have to solicit the ballot. It's sent to you. It's sent to your home.
拜登在说，这些邮寄选票不会出现在垃圾桶，选这些邮寄邮票会直接寄到你家。
7th, 8th, 9th, it still should be counted. He's just afraid of counting the votes because he knows the outcome.
You're wrong.
川普只是在怕这个选举结果，很怕再数这些票。
No, excuse me. Vice President Biden, the biggest problem, in fact, over the years with mail-in voting has not been fraud historically. It has been that sizable numbers, sometimes hundreds of thousands of ballots are thrown out because they have not been properly filled out or there is some other irregularity or they missed the deadline. So the question I have is, are you concerned that the Supreme Court with a Justice Barrett will settle any dispute?
I'm concerned that any court will settle this because here's the deal. When you get a ballot and you fill it out, you're supposed to have an affidavit. If you didn't know, you have someone say that this is me. You should be able to, if in fact you can verify that's you before the ballot is thrown out, that's sufficient to be able to count the ballot because someone made a mistake and not dotting the correct I. Who they voted for, testify, say who they voted for, say it's you, that is totally
只
legitimate.
要说这个选票是你投的，是有效的。
You know it can't be done. You know it can't. And already
All
there's
right,
been
so now-
fraud,
Mail service
deception.
川普在说这件
Final
根
question
本不可
is,
行。
in 8
ballots.
states, we can keep talking. In 8
it's a
states,
disgrace.
election workers are prohibited, currently by law, 8 states, from even beginning to process ballots, even take them out of the envelopes and
Yes.
主
flatten
持人
them
说，现在有
until
8
election day.
州
That means that
的
it's
选
likely, because
数
there's
票
going to be
员
a
呢
huge increase
目前因为
in
法律他
mail-in
们
balloting,
都不
that
能
we are
开
not
这
going
些
to
选
know
票
on。election night who the winner is, that it could be days, it could be weeks,
Could be months.
until we find out who the new president is. So first for you, sir,
在11月
finally
3号
for
当
the
天可能
vice
不会
president, I hope neither
得
of you
知
will
谁
interrupt
会
the
当
other.
选美国总
Will
统，
you urge your
可能会等好
supporters
几天，
to
或是
stay
等好几周，
calm
因为这些
during this
选
extended
票要
period,
一一的
not to
数清。
engage in any civil unrest? And will you pledge tonight that you will not declare victory until the election has been independently certified? President Trump, you
I'm
go
urging
first.
my
主持人在
supporters to
问
go
2位
into
候
the
选人，
polls and watch
在
very
数票
carefully
完，你
because
不
that's
会
what has
自
to
行
happen. I am urging them to do
宣布
it.
当选。
As you know, today there was a big problem. In Philadelphia, they went in to watch. They're called poll watchers, a very safe, very nice thing. They were thrown out. They weren't allowed to watch. You know why? Because bad things happen in Philadelphia, bad things. And I am urging my people. I hope it's going to be a fair election. If it's a fair
You're urging
election,
them what?
I am
川普希望这
100%
次
on
的
board.
选举
But
是
if I
非
see
常
tens
的
of thousands of ballots being
平等。
manipulated, I can't go along with that. And I'll tell
what-
you
what
what,
does that
from
mean,
a
not go
common
along?
sense,
Does that mean
I'll
you're gonna
tell you
tell
what
your
it means.
people to take to the
It means you have a fraudulent election. You're
And what
sending
are you
out
gonna do?
80
And
million
what would you
ballots.
do about that?
They're not equipped to. These people aren't equipped to handle it. Number one. Number two,
Okay.
they
这些
cheat. They cheat.
数票人
Hey,
根本
they
不应该当
found
数票人，因为他
ballots
们
in
没
a
有
waste
资
paper
格当
basket
选
3
票
days
员。
ago, and they all had the name
All right.
military ballots. They were military. They all had the name Trump on them.
Vice President
think
Biden,
that's good?
Vice President Biden, final question for you. Will you urge your supporters to stay calm while the vote is counted?
主
And
持
will
人
you
在
pledge
问拜
not to
登
declare，
你会
victory
呼吁
until
你的
the
支持
election
民
is
众
independently certified?
Yes.
在
Here's the deal.
选票
They count the ballots.
选举当
You pointed
天
out.
会
Some of
保
these
持平
ballots in
静
some。states can't even be opened until election day. And if there's thousands of ballots, it's going to take time to do it. And by the way, our military, they've been voting by ballots since the end of the Civil War in effect. And that's what's going to happen. Why was it not? Why is it for them somehow not fraudulent? It's the same process.
军人也是跟我们一样用邮寄选票，为什么他们的选票就是不正当的、不合法的？
It's already been established.
It's-
Take a look at Carolyn Maloney's race
I
in
asked
Manhattan.
you had an opportunity
Look
to
at Carolyn
respond.
Maloney.
Go ahead.
They have no idea what
Vice
happened.
President
主持人
Biden, go
现在
ahead.
还在
He
制
has
止
no
川
idea
普
what。he's talking about. Here's the deal. The fact is, I will accept it, and he will too. You know why?
拜登
Because
说他会
once
接
the
受
winner is declared after all the ballots are
选举
counted,
结果。
all the votes are counted, that'll be the end of it. That'll be the end of it. And if it's me, in fact, fine. If it's not me, I'll support the outcome.
如果是
And I'll
我
be a president not
非常
just
好，
for
如果不是我，我也会支持
Democrats. I'll
川
be a
普。
president for Democrats and Republicans. And this guy,
I
if
want to
in
see an
fact,
honest
Okay,
ballot count.
gentlemen,
We-
you say that's the end of
Chris,
it. This is the
I
end
wanna
of this
see an
debate.
honest ballot count.
We're
And I
gonna
主
think
持人
leave
he
it there.
说，这次的辩论
To
会
be
已经结束了。
continued as in more debates as we go on. President Trump, Vice President Biden, it's been an interesting hour and a half. I want to thank you both for
主持人
participating
现在谢谢
in the
两位
first
候
of
选
three
人。
debates that you have agreed to engage in. We want to thank Case Western Reserve University and the Cleveland Clinic for hosting this event. The next debate, sponsored by the Commission on Presidential Debates, will be 1 week from tomorrow, October 7th, at the University of Utah
下一
in
次的
Salt Lake
辩论
City.
会
The
是
two
在
vice
10月7
presidential
号，是
nominees,
副
Vice
总
President
统的
Mike。Pence and Senator Kamala Harris, will debate at 9 p.m. Eastern that night. We hope you watch. Until then, thank you and good night. Thank you.
好，您刚刚看到的是美国总统大选第1场的辩论会，那么也谢谢郑安帮我们大家全程口译。其实你刚如果全程有观看的话，你可以感觉到真的是看得蛮紧张的，因为呢，这个拜登跟川普啊，他们两个真的是你来我往，炮轰对方不停，就像机关枪一样，而且还一度吵到这个主持人跳出来要制止他们，因为只看到他们在吵架，完全没有看到针对内容有任何深入的来表达。那么无论如何呢，在这一场首场的辩论会当中，他们从 大法官的问题，然后最后讲到的是邮寄选票的问题。因为呢，这个外界就在讲说，川普啊，其实感觉上很不喜欢这个邮寄选票。那么你现在看到哈，他们2位这个总统参选人的夫人，好，刚刚也已经上台了。那么现在整个美国总统大选的首场辩论会呢，现在已经画下句点了。那么无论如何，在整场的这个辩论会，我们看到的是川普感觉上还是对自己非常有信心，甚至他还说对这个最后选票结果他会非常的开心，因为他觉得美国的这些人民很喜欢他在任这段期间做的任何政策，包括经济啦，包括疫情，看得出来川普对自己还是有信心。那么呢，川普也不停的来攻打拜登的家人，也就是他儿子之前涉嫌了一些包括在乌克兰的一些丑闻的事件。那么其实讲到家人，拜登就会非常的火大，所以在整个辩论会当中，你看拜登他也是有怒呛川普啊，叫川普闭嘴甚至还说川普是做的最烂的总统。那么无论如何，现在整个辩论会已经结束，看到的是他们吵得不停啊，双方吵个不停。那么现在在辩论会之前有一份最新的民调是拜登领先川普9个百分点，在辩论会结束之后，民调会怎么变化呢？也是大家持续关注。那么当然在最后这个11月份的美国总统大选，谁会胜出成为美国队长，全民持续关注。